What a lovely day!
Welcome, Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Moon Harvest, Amish Earther, Naughty Thumbnails, Mitch Kennedy, Original D-Rose, Rod, The Name's Burley, Todd Wazzle, Jason Hornsby, Christoph Fournier, Flat Earth Gibraltar, J Mels24, Unimento, M Iron26, Endless Flat Earth Sage, Golden McKinnon, Phoenix Rising 86, Retro Bill, More Books, Canna Bear, Bear Oats, Bogey, Michael Kahn, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Mel B. Styles, Harry Blade, Mobile Max 777, Rob W, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Maria Nealand, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Henrik 86, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, Tina Baker, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
You know how you talked yesterday in the pre-show? Like, they were pretty spot on, and I'm like, I don't know, you do this pretty frequently sometimes.
Do what?
And I just, how you disseminate some things in some situations, like yesterday with the YouTube, and you had to break it down. Well, no, YouTube, you know, if you were in their shoes and so on, you kind of seen it from that perspective. I think that's probably what it is. You kind of go in their shoes and you kind of look at it, and it seems like you give a more fair assessment as a result. Does that make sense?
If I've given off that impression, it obviously came across like I was playing devil's advocate on behalf of YouTube. That's not the case.
No, that's not what I meant.
I just know their terms of service reasonably well. That's it. That's all it is.
No, that's not what I meant. I just meant like,
sorry.
like you seem pretty like genuine about like looking at a situation like from like a genuine good position. Does that make sense?
What, with Russell Brand? Is that what we're talking about?
About anything you discussed yesterday in the pre-show. Okay, there was a lot of things you discussed, and the way you were breaking it down, it just seemed like you were trying to give it like a fair shake, an honest shake, and so forth and so on.
Fair enough. Sounds like a compliment. Thank you.
Well, yeah, that's what I was shooting for. But I noticed this every now and then, and I'm like, oh wow, you know, kind of interesting.
I mean, the Russell Brand
Yeah,
thing is...
Nathan, I'd have to agree with Righteous there. When it comes, especially with anything with YouTube, but things in general, you don't just jump on what everyone else is saying. Like everyone else is saying, Russell Brand got thrown off or demonetized, and some of them are saying thrown off of YouTube because of, yeah, he's not, he's just demonetized. Because, you know, he's being accused of something. But the problem is not that he's being accused. The terms of service obviously say no. It's that you're bringing down the appearance or the public appearance of YouTube. You know, so they feel they have to do something, you know, which makes sense.
Or just not expose that to...
What did they do when Cardi B confessed to intoxicating people with noxious substances?
I mean, there's a lot more to this Russell Brand thing. There's more to what's going on with Russell Brand currently than Russell Brand, if that makes sense. Russell Brand is just a ignition source, because as a byproduct, they've had have had the British government contact them to say, this person in the public eye, I assume you're going to follow YouTube's lead and demonetize this person, and Rumble have written back and gone, no. So Rumble have basically defied the trend, and it just shows how fickle people are, because a lot of people who are condemning Russell Brand have suddenly gone, oh, hold on a minute, you mean Rumble have stood by him? Oh, maybe I'll change my mind about what's going on. You're like, okay. Why did you make up your mind in the first place? The guy's not been on trial. You know what I mean? All right, but the media said, yeah, there's your first problem, isn't it? But ultimately, Rumble have always sold themselves as being like the alternative platform, this and that. And a lot of people have gone, wow, it's nice to see them actually stick by their guns and say, no, we've got this draconian system that's surreptitiously taking away people's freedom of speech. And no, that's not what we stand for here at Rumble. You think, oh, good for you. Does it mean that Russell Brand's a good guy or a bad guy? You can't call it either way. But does that change Rumble's policy? No, it won't, and it hasn't. Does it change YouTube's policy? No, it won't, and it hasn't. So everything falls in line with what should be happening based on what should be happening. Does it alter the conspiratards that are out there saying this is a coordinated attack? It is a coordinated attack. What are you talking about? Isn't that obvious? I don't know. Some of the stupidity levels when it comes to this stuff just is off the scale. I don't know how. I think it's because it's a YouTuber that suddenly I am bombarded with the stuff where I typically don't pay any attention to the news. It's just managed to permeate this subculture that we find ourselves in much more than maybe your average mainstream headline would, because I wouldn't pay attention to it. I'm not exposed to it, which is good. But this stuff I am. So I've drawn an opinion on it where I really don't care. I must have been a teenager the last time I watched Russell Brand when he was talking about his ball bags constantly. And I said yesterday, a lot of the stuff that I say has actually, in some part, been swiped from him when he used to do Big Brother's Little Brother. And he would do the after-show commentary about the boring bits where everyone's being filmed and not saying anything. And he was essentially brought into Channel 4 to spice up what was really boring television by talking about edited clips and adding a bit of spice to it with a bit of just eccentricism, or whatever you want to call it, eccentricity. And that's what he had to offer. Now, he's let that go to his head as he got more and more popular by the sounds of things, and he's self-confessed to this. He's even had himself in a sex clinic at one stage. You're like, well, you don't go to a sex clinic because you're having great sex with people. You go into a sex clinic because you've got a problem. So, he knows he had a problem. It's all been under the surface, but by the same token, out in the open because he's telling people about it and even writing about it in his book. Now all people have had to do is put together all the pieces and coordinate an attack against him, and it's been quite successful, trial by media. Do I care? The guy's got millions. I couldn't care less. He probably is a bit of a shit. Do you not all agree? From what he self-confesses to be, he sounds like a bit of a toe rag. Well, that's what he is. But there we go. As for the women, we'll find out. If they become Jane Does in court, then I'll lend a lot more credence to what's being accused of him, with evidence presented alongside it at the standard that a judge would be interested in looking at. Until then, that's my attitude. Oh, right, there might be victims. Well, okay, well, when they're confirmed to be victims, I might have a bit more empathy, but till then he's supposed to be innocent until he's proven guilty, isn't he? Am I missing something?
Gotta be talking about Russell Brand.
Of course.
Yeah, he doesn't get. I guess he's not getting the same fan base as Johnny Depp was getting.
Well, the problem is where you toe the line in media, right? Because it is a natural inclination, and we see it in the ballers all the time, that if someone is on your side, you're less.
You need a flyer for that.
I know. I was going to say it.
No,
I was thinking the same thing. There goes that Ferrari.
Lamborghini.
Yeah, sure. But if someone is on your side, right, you're more likely to look past or ignore issues. When somebody starts speaking out against your position, you're more likely to look for problems. So if he opposes mainstream media, they might be more inclined to look for problems.
It works both ways, doesn't it? So someone who's a massive problem that you're looking for every fault joins your side, and suddenly all is forgiven. The fickle nature of the general public.
Well, someone brought up Cardi B there a few minutes ago. But the difference between Cardi B and... Yeah, someone brought up Cardi B when I was saying that you had a more balanced outlook on why YouTube demonetized Russell Brand. But the thing about Cardi B is the public don't have any outcry about Cardi B. That's why YouTube... It's not that YouTube are doing it because they're good-natured or their heart is in the right place. It's not about that. It's about how people will view YouTube. And Cardi B, nobody will care what she does because it's Cardi B. But Russell Brand, if he's accused of doing some sexual stuff, then that will become a problem. And that's the difference. It's not that YouTube have a heart or care. It's about the only thing they care about is what the general public are going to have an outcry about. And they won't have an outcry about Cardi B. It's only Cardi B.
Yeah, but hold on, when there's a witch hunt going on with the media, who could say what's true and what's not true?
I'm not accusing anyone. 1 second, John. Sorry, I'm not accusing anyone of anything here. I'm saying I'm coming from YouTube. Is what you like? I'm talking about YouTube. Like when I brought up the point, I brought up very wrong before you joined that because I didn't. The Righteous brought it up originally, and I joined in, and I said that Russell Brand is being demonetized, and the reason he is because he's affecting YouTube's public persona, right? So he's been demonetized by YouTube. And someone said, "What about Cardi B when she said she used to drug people or whatever?" And I said, "Fair enough." But the difference is, nobody cares about what Cardi B does. If they did, she'd be demonetized. That's the difference. It's about what the problem is. Not YouTube. The problem, and Nathan just said a minute ago, is the public. Public will accept all kinds of sick shit. Sorry about the language.
I'm sorry, I'm only half paying attention because I'm talking about swimming lessons with my wife. I'm really sorry.
Sort of like that actor that plays the Flash. Like my kids won't watch that movie because there's certain things that he was accused of. So, but how do I know those things are true?
Well, the thing is, whatever happened to Russell Brand, right? As long as it's a standard that's set forth and applied equally to all, I think most people would be happy if it was just applied equally. I think the fact that it's not shows that there's influence within the media that's controlling public perception, and people take offense to that because there's no objectivity to the standard.
Well, see, that's the problem. The media didn't have any outcry about what Cardi B did. There was no outcry about that. No problem. Everything's okay, regardless of what she did. And that's why people don't have a problem with Cardi B. But people have a problem with Russell Brand. Do you know what I mean? The general idiot. So consequently,
Brian,
YouTube have a problem with Russell Brand. So the people just get their opinions from the media. That's where the problem is. Sorry, Neil. Yeah, you're agreeing.
I think you're right about that, because if the public don't care, then they don't care. But if the public cares, look out.
Well, see, that's why the platform that Nathan was talking about is such a problem, because they didn't just fall into line with everyone else. It's called the problem with consensus. And you see how people behave when consensus is questioned. You know, it's never pretty.
No, not at all. I mean, they're okay with... I'll give you an example that's closer to home for us. They're okay with being shown a piece of salami and told that's some star out in God knows how many billion light years away. And then it turns out to be a piece of salami. There's no outcry over that. Not a bit of outcry. But if, you know what I mean? But if somebody who's famous, genuinely, if they're genuine, not just putting it on, they genuinely come out as a flat earther, straight away they're labeled as a conspiracy theorist. And companies don't want to use them as part of their advertising campaign. Like with what's his name, the basketballer. He's one of the most famous. Can't remember his name now. He's playing for the Boston Celtics at the moment, or he was, and then he was. But back a couple of years ago, he came out and said that he was a flat earther. So now Shaq might have been messing, I don't know. But this other lad,
Talking about Kyrie Irving.
Kyrie Irving, yeah. And instantly he was getting hassled off the people, off of his sponsors and stuff like that. But there's not a word about the piece of salami that they tried to pass off as a star a billion light years away. You know what I mean? Nobody cared about that. So there wasn't any outcry, so nothing was done about it. Nobody was defunded. You know that kind of way? Nobody, NASA or whoever, they weren't defunded. There was no big outcry. There was no big inquiry. But when someone like Kyrie Irving comes out in 2016, 2017 and says that he's a flat earther, suddenly it's a big deal.
Right. Well, people have confused having a collection of subjective opinions that everyone agrees on. They've confused that with objectivity. And that's the philosophy it seems like that everybody works with under nowadays. And when that is challenged, it is hard for them to deal with. That's why you get such anger from the ballers.
Yeah, consensus is the new objectivity. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like I agree on this subjective opinion of mine with you, and you agree with this other guy. That's three people agreeing, so therefore it must be true. But it's done like that through our society, and that's not objective. Agreeing on something is not objective.
Why don't we look at orbits, John? They require a flat plane, right? But they're supposed to be orbits of sphere and spherical bodies and around a sphere. But they've all agreed that that's what they are, instead of them being based on a flat plane and angles from a flat plane. Do you know what I mean? The consensus is, they're all based on spheres. You can't have orbits without spheres, ignoring that they have to use a flat plane. So there's consensus disguised as objective truth.
Exactly. That's a very good example of it. Or like the celestial sphere, because they hijack that constantly. They think because there's a celestial sphere from a flat plane that all of a sudden the ground you're standing on is a sphere. They agree on it, so they think that that's the truth.
Exactly. There you go. Good. That's as good an example as any. Because consensus truth is that, although it's not truth, the consensus opinion is that we live on a globe, whereas the truth is the earth is flat. Do you know what I mean? The objective truth is that it definitely can't be a sphere. But there you go. The consensus becomes objective truth.
Way to bring it back to flat Earth, Brian. You're the man.
Thank you, Neil. Well, that's what I mean. This is a perfect subject, isn't it? To point out that hypocrisy. We don't need Russell Brand for that,
No, we don't. But that's, people crave a standard, right? Because fairness is something, that's kind of inherent to people, right? But fairness, it's a tricky way to play it, right?
Yeah, well, fairness is subjective if you've got an agenda, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you have an agenda, because they'll overlook problems. Like people come on here defending Fight the Flat Earth, attacking Nathan for publishing or republishing what a newspaper article said, right? Just reading off what a newspaper article said. They'll come in and act like Nathan has done something wrong. Like.
Yeah, but he's allowed to accuse Nathan of hitting his child. Because that's what pissed me off about that guy.
Yeah, but did Craig actually attack Nathan, or was it people, other ballers attacking Nathan? Because I saw the comments, and Craig wasn't attacking Nathan. That I saw. Now, I could be wrong. Nathan can correct me.
He does enough of it, Brian. He's done enough of it.
Hold on. No, Craig actually sent someone here to tell Nathan that he didn't appreciate what he was, the video he made about him. That was just Nathan republishing an article, and that guy, when he found out that's what it was, he's like, oh, I feel dirty now, like, I don't even know that guy's position on any of this. He may have been a baller or a flat earther, but when he realized it was just a newspaper article, he was like, oh God, I feel gross,
And did your man state that Craig sent them?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, because Craig was in the comments. Now, I supported Craig on that situation because, the way I saw it was he was being pushed to a limit. This neighbor of his or whatever he had helped out, he'd done things for, you know what I mean? And the person just basically was treating him like dirt. So it comes down to a personal level. I supported him on it. I was like, yeah, well, I mean, look, everyone's got a breaking point. They're going to get angry at some point when someone's treating them when someone's treating you like dirt. You're going to eventually, you're going to buck that. You're going to do something. You're eventually going to get angry. You're not going to just keep taking it. That's what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I understood that. So I don't know what the problem was, which I'm at. But maybe Craig did send in the guy, or maybe the guy was just say that Craig sent him. Who knows? I'm not saying, I don't know.
But see, that has nothing to do with Craig's arguments. You know what I mean? Like, this thing is only a problem as long as Craig focuses on it. He can just accept it, move on, or he can dwell on it and let it destroy him. It's going to be on him to do that.
But the only reason, sorry, John.
I was going to say, if he wants to focus on what the courts have decided he is, that's going to destroy him. He can accept it and move on. That's about his only option, unless he wants to, pretty much destroy himself. Sending people to talk to Nathan is not the right way to handle this.
Well, the thing about it is that with the ballers, because they spent so much time in the past, let's say 9 years for Betty, 8-9 years, focusing on as much personal stuff, as much personal stuff to do with flat earthers as possible. I suppose they can't, but not expect flat earthers to attack them on their personal stuff when it becomes a public headline. Do you know what I mean? Because Craig was on this show, and he did call when he came in here one day a couple of years ago. He did call Nathan Slappy, which is referring to an accusation against Nathan. You know what I mean? If you're going to give people, and the ballers in general, they can't stop with the personal attacks. So consequently, it's like if I keep kicking you in the shin, right, and then you kick me back in the shin, how can I complain? If you know what I mean, I can't complain at that point.
Oh no, you don't. You're missing the standard. Right, let's get it clear how this works. You, as a flat earther, get kicked in the shin repeatedly. You, as a flat earther, must accept and tolerate that is an acceptable thing to be happening. Now, should you turn around and kick the person back in the shin, you will be hauled off to jail because they will immediately report you to the police. Like bullies. You know that bully at school that would slap everyone around, and the moment someone broke his nose, he'd be at the headmaster calling the police? Yeah, that's what this is.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I can't feel sorry for him. I can't in any way relate to him.
Right. So Mr. Sensible literally sent police round to me because he came to my comments and perceived a slight in one of my replies to his comment on my video. Not one comment, hundreds of them from Mr. Sensible. One of them he perceived as me saying I wanted his home address. Not true. But he went to the police with it. That's what they do. Cowards.
Yeah, I remember the comment. It was, who the hell does this guy think he is? And he thought you were trying to get someone to dox him.
Yeah, I think it was something like, who is this guy? Right? And then he thought you were looking for information about him personally. But Mr. Sensible, see, this is the thing. Remember we're talking about a consensus truth, right? A consensus opinion being called objective truth. MC Toon has publicly admitted to trying to dox as many flat earthers at one time on a fandom page or a fan wiki page, something like that he created, and he said he's going to do it again. What has Mr. Sensible said about that? Absolutely nothing. When Nathan wasn't trying to dox Mr. Sensible, Mr. Sensible sent the police to his house. But MC Toon can publicly state that he's trying to dox as many flat earthers at the same time as possible. Not a word about it. Do you know what I mean? That's the problem. Like Nathan, like it is true they can do whatever they want to us, and it's publicly accepted. But when something like that happens the other way around, or they just perceive it, right, or they're scared of it happening, they call the police on you. It's ridiculous. But there's not a word. They all just accept MC Toon was okay to try and dox as many flat earthers at one time as possible. He was okay with that. And they were all okay with that. So there you go. There's complete hypocrisy.
Yeah, on the other hand, you know, that when you talk about people who are bullies at school, when you got to know the bully and went to see what their home life was like and you found that their dad was smacking them about, you're like, oh, right. Suddenly it all makes sense. And this is the same for the people that we deal with. When we say share your pain, it's because that's what a lot of these people are. You know, while you might defend Craig's actions because of his descriptions of his own mitigation, which failed to impress a judge, let's put it that way, right? That's what you're getting. You're getting his mitigation, his explanation for his actions that were described by a judge as being outrageously violent. And it's not the first incident. You know, Craig took his offensive weapon and started poking at a woman because he had a bout of road rage. I mean, you can listen to his mitigation for that as well, but you're just talking about somebody who is, quote, outrageously violent. Well, there's normally a reason behind that. But when somebody's done some criminal action, yeah, they'll listen to the mitigation, but does it defend the actions? No. Can you explain the actions because of some crappy upbringing they've had, because they're total chav, whatever? Yeah, you can explain it with that, but you can't excuse it with that. And that's how the people we deal with behave. Now, when I say this, what's going through my mind is, that's not my life. I don't have a crappy life. As my wife makes a load of noise making me a cup of coffee. That's just not something I experience beyond the show. Beyond the vitriol of flat earth debate, that is not the life I experience. Now, I don't know if it's true for everybody else here. I mean, do you all go out into the world and feel persecuted and like you've got to express some road rage or beat up a neighbour? No, is the answer. Well, why? Well, because I'm quite content with my life. Now, I was content when I was a baller, but there's a certain mindset that puts you in a position where you feel like you've got to, in this instance, fight the flat earth. Well, that's very telling, in my humble opinion. You know, I don't feel like I need to fight the globe earth. I just prove it's flat and get on with my day.
Well, I would say now that Craig is not always a good guy, right, as I know from experience, and he's not always honest. But in that situation, with the details that was given out by the court and in the newspaper article, I agreed with him. It's like, if he's been kind and looked after a neighbour, or, you know what I mean, shown a neighbour some generosity, and the neighbour basically spits in his face, then the hell with it. Do you know what I mean? That would be my attitude. Now, other circumstances involving him, I wouldn't agree with his actions and some of the stuff he said or some of the stuff he done. Like, I don't know all the details of his personal life. But when it came to that, I mean, I couldn't fault anyone for getting angry. So I'd say that about the situation. But if the shoe was on another foot, if it was one of us that did something like that, would it be just video after video being made on their side about this crazy, violent, flat earther, whatever, blah, blah, blah? I mean, how much would we hear about it? And it's not your video. I don't know of anyone else that made a video on the subject. You know, so that's my issue with the whole thing. The hypocrisy. It's like, it's okay for ye to just make a massive deal, make a mountain out of a molehill. Every time a flat earther creates a molehill, it's a mountain. But it's not okay for us to mention, you know, your behaviour. If you know what I mean? It's like, it's such hypocrisy. I know what you're talking about with bullying, and God knows where this attitude is coming from with some of them. But yeah, it's just, you know,
well, let me enlighten you.
Oh, let me enlighten you. And you kick him back, and it's a big deal. Come on.
I was waiting for that moment, Brian. Sorry. you don't know where it's coming from with the juxtaposition that I gave with the bully at school and the dad smacking him around. Yeah, there is a juxtaposition to be had here. It's just not with daddy at home. It's with Big Daddy government, who also metaphorically abuses the people. And this bracing against us, who brace against Big Daddy government, is the lashing out of the bully kid at school by metaphor. So while the general cuckery that we notice from the people who parrot verbatim what their overlords have told them, lost my train of thought because I've now got coffee. My general train of thought is that the daddy in the analogy is Big Daddy government as opposed to an actual father. Does that make sense?
Well, it's got to be extra hard because Big Daddy government is explaining how this works from a flat plane. So that's really hard to take.
This is the winner. We've got to give this a name. Like 2021 year of the sextant, 2020 year of the black swan. This all roads lead to a flat Earth. This highway to the flat Earth requirement that the globe has. We need to give this a title.
Say that again, Nathan.
We dub certain years, like the year of the sextant, the year of the black swan, right? The year of the elevation angle, right? This is monumental to me because noticing or a positive recognition by assertion that we have a requirement, globe, Earth, or flat, to reference a horizontal plane. It's a flat Earth. In all instances,
Lambo.
we got to give that a title.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised about any of that because that's what I pre-assumed from years ago. Of course they do. It's flat. I've never since 2015. I've never questioned it. So I know that they actually do always need a flat plane because how could it not? It's flat. But you're looking for a name to give to that.
That's correct. That's exactly what I'm saying. Other than you dropping in that you thought about it 2 weeks ago.
Well, I have to put that in there. Name. The age of the needed horizontal plane? Oh, maybe not. That's a bit long.
No, it's the year of the flat Earth requirement.
No, you're a consensus. We agree. You need a flat Earth.
Yeah. The year of horizontal concession or
horizontal concession. The year of horizontal concession. Nobody will know what the hell you're talking about, though. It needs to be clearly referenced to the fact that if you're on a globe, you'll need a flat Earth for that.
A baseline.
Year of the flat baseline. That's it, isn't it?
The year of the Lamborghini.
I was going to say that, but then it's so devoid of any connection to what we're actually debating about, which is the baseline. The year of the flat baseline. I like that. Kudos, Jorge.
Hello, everyone. What
Hello.
about the Lambo ley lines?
We're done with that now, Gene. You're too late. Lambo ley lines.
I hope we got a video today.
Come again?
I said, I hope we have a video today.
Got nothing lined up. This is where we'd normally line it up. We just don't have 10th this week.
Oh, let me dig in my TikTok bag.
Say something, John?
I did it once. I thought everybody else was going to pick up, and drop a video.
I would still ascribe full credit to you as much as Brian's tried to steal your valor here, John. This is very much yours, I would say. This revelation that all roads lead to a flat plane and you'll need a flat Earth for that. That's all down to you.
And how about we just
I'm
discuss
take that with
and
you,
the
John.
housekeeping questions instead of a video all the time? If you don't got a video, let's do
First you
housekeeping.
give it a title, then you give it a housekeeping question. baby steps, Neil. These things have to be slowly refined. There is no rush.
I'm not trying to take it away from John. It was never a surprise to me. It's like, I'm like, yeah, as the quote QE, yeah, it's a well done. Yeah, of course they do. I mean, John has been pointing it out, so I'm not trying to take any of that away. I'm not trying to steal anyone's thunder. I just pointed out, for me, it was just like, I wasn't like, wow, really? Yeah, that makes sense. They do only, it's like, yeah, of course they do. It's flat. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, smarty pants. Like, just because you already recognise that and it was obvious to you.
I'm talking about the video. You said nobody has a video lined up. So
Right.
let's do housekeeping.
Well, no, we were talking about something else, Neil. You're our everyman in this instance, so you're useful to us. Did you recognise, even 2 weeks ago, that all roads led to a flat Earth, Neil?
I recognized it because you kept saying it.
And before I kept saying it as a result of John pointing it out to me, did you recognise and realise, as Brian the Smarty Pants did, that that's bloody obvious? Obviously all roads lead to a flat Earth, just without those words. Did you realise that or not? I'm hoping you'll say no to back me.
Not really.
Me neither.
Not really.
No. The Dumbos didn't get it, Brian. Sorry.
Well, it's not really like that. It came down to all my experiences. How you have to remember, it took me 8 seconds to switch from being a supposed globe believer to throwing the whole lot out the window.
Me too.
So it was a lot of experiences prior to that that led to that. And if you didn't have those experiences, then, you know,
8 seconds?
maybe you wouldn't switch so fast.
Is that how long it took you? Bloody hell, that's like an eternity. All flashed before my eyes in about 3 seconds when I heard Matt Powerland say, flat Earth. I'm like, oh my God! It took me less than a second.
Yeah, okay, well, you bet me by several seconds. But the point I'm making is once I got to that 8 seconds, I never went back. I never questioned it after that. There was just no question in my mind. That's why I could argue against Globers who had supposed physics degrees and different things when I didn't know anything about anything, basically. And it was just my self-assurity that they couldn't handle. You know what I mean? I didn't even have any great knowledge. I was just new. Yeah, it's flat, like.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
That was it.
I'm similar but other than I questioned my own ability to argue the subject as opposed to my understanding of it being flat. At the time, I didn't recognise the belief, which it was. At the time, I didn't have enough evidence, realistically. So I was in a state of belief, but I never questioned that belief, which is kind of a bit sad. Other than I did, because I was obviously on the road to where we are now, finding out all the answers that I could find. So obviously, you're not going to find yourself on that road unless you're questioning stuff. But I'm still saying, by my standard, I'm like, no, I'm pretty certain straight from the off. There was never any second guessing. Am I right about this? Not in the slightest. It's more, can I fight this argument? Do I understand how Coriolis works? Do I understand what they're trying to argue? So you go along to Earth discussions. I don't know if did you used to do that? Did you used to listen to Earth discussions?
I do remember that name, I think. I was mostly just watching videos people would make at the time. You know, could have been a video from Jaron Campanella or from Mark Sargent or whoever.
Oh, sure.
You know, Eric DeBay. So that, you even at the time.
But what I'm saying is, around about that time, what I was looking for was what I did not know. In other words, you're going, how does this argument work? How do they try and overcome this position? So what I found myself looking at was Earth discussions with the Rumpus and the guy with the Alsatian dog. There was a whole bunch of them. I can't remember the names now. It's 8 years ago. But they'd sit around talking about ball Earth, a bit like we're doing with Russell Brand this morning, right? Just shooting the breeze. And then every so often some crazy flat earther would go in without the slightest idea what they were doing, and they'd have their ass ripped to pieces. It was, in some ways, quite amusing seeing how easily they all took apart flat Earth claimants.
Yeah, because technically they were all using a flat Earth to fight a flat Earth. I mean, that's what they don't realise. All roads lead to a flat Earth. So whatever they were fighting like a flat Earth with was with a flat Earth. they didn't know that.
Well, that's, again, part of the revelation of this year, to turn it around. If they ever come to us and say, I can't be flat. All right, well, how does celestial navigation work for you then? Or any other aspect of globe Earth that they want to claim is going to originate with a flat plane measurement at some point. So you just have to pick the point that they're arguing against and say, let's rewind the clock. Where does this claim start? What flat Earth measurement's being taken? Typically an angle to something in the sky. And then ask them how that aspect of their claim of a globe works if it's not flat. Are you going to get this elevation angle? It's just the start.
Yeah, I actually remember people asking some of the ballers, how are you using getting those angles? And they would say, I do, and this is directly from my memory, they're not making it up, that they would say, well, the surface is only presumed to be flat for a little bit. You know, that would be their argument, and that would be accepted. And the problem was that was then accepted by the flat earther. It could have been anyone. Could have been David Weiss. Could have been Geronism. It could have been anyone at the time. You know, it's like, so how are you getting an angle from that? And it was like, well, we're only presuming the Earth is flat for a little bit. Or they could say, well, the Earth is really big.
That's happened in the last 2 weeks.
It could be a little bit flat.
It's happened in the last 2 weeks. Jeron gets told by McToon, oh, we just draw out a little flat tangent to get the angle. And then next thing you know, Jeron's arguing it to me with a GP out in space.
Yeah. Hold on. There's the way they did it was they used eye level as a point source derivative from a tangent point that's where eye level or where surface level meets the sky, right? And if you don't know what those words mean or what the connotations behind them, right, then they can slip it by because they're not even thinking about it.
So,
hello, let's go.
Hello.
Hello. Well, it's good to have you all. We're going to attempt today to do a full session of housekeeping because we haven't done one for absolutely ages. We always get a couple of questions under our belt and then never seem to make it to the end. So we're going to attempt it in an order that hopefully doesn't have any repeats from the repeated ad nausea ones like elevation angle. Well, then I've started there, haven't I? Any evidence you can get an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline?
That's a negative.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
yeah, he really need a flat plane for that. Sorry.
That's a. I don't think it's the first time I've heard it. I think you said it a couple of weeks ago as well, Brian. But do you just want to repeat the answer to the molten iron core claim again?
Yeah. Will they need a flat plane for that? The answer is yes. And the reason why. Go on, Adam.
I was going to say, if there's a molten iron core, why would you take an elevation angle to it?
You don't. You've got a return signal if you're talking about primary and secondary wave readings.
No, I'm talking celestial navigation. In their world, you take an elevation angle from a tangent, and then you take that elevation angle and apply it from the molten iron core.
That's what I said the other day, didn't I?
Yeah, angles from hell. But the question on the table from Brian is: do you need a flat Earth for the claim we have a molten iron core? That's the point I want to dwell on. I'm hoping John will pipe up.
No, you do. You do need it. And I'll answer it. Because you must first hijack the celestial dome model that's based on a flat plane to then turn that into a sphere that you're going to put a molten iron core at the center of. So you do.
Right, but if you're going to measure P waves and S waves, right, that means that you're going to do an ultrasound where you send sound out at different angles from the surface and measure their return signal.
Yeah, you'll definitely need a flat Earth for the physical claim of an interaction with the molten iron core with P waves and S waves. But what Brian is saying is, in order to infer, it's on screen now, perfect timing. In order to infer that you've got a molten iron core, you first have to derive the celestial sphere as depicted here. Brian called it the dome because it's only hemispherical in respect to one section of the ground, which is flat. Then you've got to draw out your angles as depicted on here with a star moving to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth that's wrapped around the angle off a flat plane. That, by way of Haversine conversion, will get you to the sphere, in this case, surplus to requirements because it's not being utilised. The celestial sphere and the flat plane are the only thing being utilised in this diagram. Ergo, you first need to extrapolate out from the flat plane and the dome of the heavens as they are presented to you, if it was polaricentric, and then give you your molten iron core after those measurements are taken.
Well,
Hence, you need
that's
a
how
flat
you
plane
get
for
your
that.
presupposed. That's how you get your presupposed spherical Earth. With the molten iron core, you're going to use P waves and S waves from a flat plane.
Yeah, after you've inferred that it exists. You're right. I'm not saying you're wrong, John. I'm saying that first you've got to infer that there is one. Well, to infer that there is one takes this process to get to the inference, as you rightly agreed with. And then you can imply that you can take a physical measurement of it off a flat plane with P waves and S waves. That's the actual order, right? Chronologically speaking.
Yeah, you have to assume it's there first by measuring a flat plane. And then you measure the P waves and S waves off a flat plane to calculate that it exists.
Perfect. So in two respects, both the assertion of a physical appearance of the molten iron core and the inference that it exists in the first instance both have a Lamborghini and a Ferrari racing with each other on the highway to get to the point where they can say, you need a flat Earth for that. Right?
Yeah.
Epic. Okay, well, that was good.
Just on one point, to start with the baseline.
Hold on, we got Righteous trying to join and Jorge, who hasn't got a word in yet. If you don't mind, Brian, I know this was your epic point, but go ahead, Jorge.
No, they need to start with the baseline in order to do this, the flat plane.
Yeah, that's Brian's point. And John's point after you've inferred that you've got a molten iron core to be measuring physically. So, yes.
Just one small point of order, taking a quote from QE again. The Haversine is actually not connected to the celestial dome. The Haversine is only put into practice after the universal after, let's say, measurements are placed onto the universal transverse Mercator map. Then that's what the Haversine is for. It's for turning that map, which is already based on the latitude and longitude grid around the globe that was hijacked from its original measurements of flat plane measurements. It's the flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris. Once they turn that latitude and longitude grid into a sphere, and then made a flat map out of that, turning all the latitude and longitude grid into an XY coordinate system, but where when you use the Haversine, it converts that because the universal transverse Mercator, even though it's a grid map, it's based on a globe. So that's what they use the Haversine formula for, to convert that back to globe.
To translate the transverse Mercator back to a globe.
Yeah, the universal transverse Mercator.
Let me just stop. Just let me get the order. That's a lot of steps. So you're saying you first have to derive the celestial sphere, and then you can infer the globe by projecting out the positions on the ground by way of elevation angles that give you a radius 3959 sphere to wrap around your position at the centre. Okay, that gives you the globe. Then you wrap a cylinder around that globe and project the points out from that globe onto the cylinder. And that is matched with the latitude and longitude lines. When you unroll that cylinder, you have what's known as a transverse Mercator map. That would be a flat map projected from a globe with the intact latitude and longitude lines straight on a flat map. Then you convert the transverse Mercator projection from a globe from a flat Earth back onto a sphere. Am I right in what I'm hearing?
Yeah, let me lay out the steps, right? Step one, you measure the latitude and longitude grid, right, using flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris.
Check.
Then you take all the longitude lines that are all diverging from a center point, right? This is Polaris' GP point, and you wrap them around so all the corresponding ones meet each other. That creates a globe, right? You then take the radius of that globe, which will have a 21,600 nautical mile circumference, and you convert that radius to statute miles. And then you convert the circumference to statute miles, and then you turn that globe into a cylinder map, map where all the longitude lines become all your Y lines, and all the latitude lines become all your X lines. So you have X and Y, right? So it looks like you're using a flat map with the X and Y, right? But you're not. You're actually still using a globe map. And then they take measurements that are done in reality. Let's just say, for a great example, celestial navigation, circles of equal latitude. They place them onto that map, which distorts those measurements. The universal transverse Mercator distorts the measurements, and then they use the Haversine formula to convert the already globe projection that's pretending to be a flat projection back to a globe and saying globe, when the whole thing started and ended with flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris, creating the latitude and longitude grid. And the proof of it is, if anyone wants proof of this, all they have to do is look at the amount of longitude lines that intersect Australia between Sydney, Newcastle, which Newcastle is just north of Sydney, and Perth. They have, I think, 3 intersecting Australia, whereas in reality, across that latitude, 32nd degree, whereas in reality, there is only 1 longitude line intersecting the 32nd degree latitude. Only 1 longitude line, sorry, intersecting the 32nd degree through Australia.
You've got a video on this. What's the video called on that exact thing?
The time zones. You're talking about the time zone argument.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, you've got a video specifically on that line that cuts through Australia. I know you have.
Time zone tower, I called it. Yeah, and there's a presentation on quantum ratios on the ball busters about it. Adam and me did it.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, so there's, to me, just distance being put between the original flat Earth elevation angle measurement to Polaris to give you the latitude, and the end globe, not the globe that's projected out directly from a flat plane, but the globe that comes from the Haversine projection from the flat projection from the globe from the flat plane. So they've got enough distance from the original flat Earth measurement to convolute it.
Yeah, but they needed 2 flat Earth. They needed a flat Earth, an actual flat Earth, and then they needed a flat globe to come back to being a globe. So to turn an actual flat Earth into a mathematical globe, then turn that mathematical globe into a pretend flat XY map, and then they use more mathematics, the Haversine formula, to convert it back to being a globe again.
Wow, amazing!
It's terrible.
It is. It's a cluster screw. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Well, angular sizes. That's all I got.
That's not a distance.
Well,
no, there's no actual distance right now. I'm not even sure if it exists. It's that clouded.
Yeah, the sun definitely exists. Yes, it's definitely got an not actual size that we can measure. Is there any evidence of a distance?
Well, officially, if you pre-assume the Earth is a globe of radius 3959 miles, and you pre-assume that Venus is also a sphere of equal size, and you say that's the sister of your globe of 3959 miles, and then during Venus's transit in front of the sun, you calculate the distance to Venus based off of its angular size, right, from the globe Earth. Then you calculate Venus's distance from the sun based off both of their angular sizes. Then you will get a 93 million mile distance.
Now, when you're using this transitive,
you just missed one step. So to get the full scale of the known universe, you need Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion to put it all into, you guessed it, orbital motion. Then you can get scale and distance for everything else. But
Brian,
just let me just finish. Although Brian didn't specifically detail anything other than Venus and the Sun, so strictly speaking, he's not wrong. He just excluded one step that would be in play in this process. I like to drop it in just so it's always there. Brian didn't have to. I'm just doing it anyway. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, you're talking about orbits at that point. Are you going to include all the elements of orbital mechanics and the three Keplerian elements?
I can hear something in the distance. What's that sound? You're going to need a flat earth for that. Yeah, they'll have to include the flat earth they need for it. Yes, John. They will be. They must. A flat earth is required.
Hey, Chocolate. Yeah, well, basically, they need a flat earth. Hey, D-Rose, they're going to need a flat earth for their... Sorry, yes.
I'm just saying morning to them so that they're not ignored. Morning, D-Rose. Morning, Chocolate.
I know, my point was only that just on the back of your points.
Go ahead.
Just saying that they're going to need a flat earth for their fraudulent sun distance. Even to come up with their fraudulent distance, they're going to need a flat earth.
Right. I mean, like you were saying in the pre-show, and I was mocking you, when Red's Rhetoric was in a tete-a-tete with Smokescreen Design off the back of a video that Jaron made, just to make this as complicated as possible, he responded to the mathematics of distance to the moon in that example by pointing out where Red's inserted the R value. Now, right back then, and I've spoken to Smokescreen Design off the back of this, and Quantum Eraser has too, and he was unaware of the massive implications of that. But obviously he recognised it in the maths. He was highlighting that maths to the audience with the R assumption and how it had been employed by Red's Rhetoric. Now, after the fact, obviously we're highlighting to him, well, it was right about the time that we're pointing out they're always in effect begging the question of an R value with every single globe claim they've ever made ever. They always assume R. But we didn't realise that the more important detail is what he's done to add to when he employs R is a measurement of a flat earth. So while we all praised Smokescreen Design for recognising how you, let's just put it in the order we highlight now, first measure a flat earth and then insert your fundamentalist religious R value belief after measuring a flat earth. So that bit didn't get focused on. What got focused on was you're begging the question of a sphere earth by inserting R. To a flat earth measurement didn't necessarily get highlighted the way it would today. So while I mocked you in the pre-show to say, well, yeah, you might say you recognised it instinctually, yeah, there was lots of people like you who were smart, like Smokescreen, who were smart, that also recognised it. They just didn't recognise how significant it was, and that's taken refracted curvature, John, to sort of keep banging the same drum and pointing out, basically building the highway all these Lamborghinis are now travelling along. You know what I mean?
No, I do. There's just one thing I'd like to say about the moon, though, just because you brought up a distance to the moon. I know we're on a distance to the sun, but the distance to the moon is actually, I found out, just as prevalent. And the reason is the claim, right, that the sun was big and far away began with Eratosthenes, right? He was claimed, using a flat Earth elevation angle, to have measured a portion of the radius or the circumference of a globe Earth, right, giving him a radius, right? But only once he pre-assumed that the sun was a certain size and distance, so that they would have parallel light rays that would match the shadows on a globe Earth that we see in reality with diverging light rays. But the moon, right, the full moon gives us the exact same shadows, bad moon shadow, right? The exact same shadows as the sun, the full moon. But it just happens that they must claim the moon to be orbiting the globe, right, and be much smaller. So consequently, what they needed to, and this is something I didn't know until I went digging into it and found out, that they actually, the distance to the moon and the moon's claimed size, and it all comes back to its angular size, it's all based on the fact that they need to show how the moon's divergent light also gives us the exact same shadows as the sun. The full moon's divergent light gives us the exact same shadows as the sun. Because it was pointed out to me by Rob Durham, right? And one of the ballers before him was trying to say it to me, and Rob showed it to me, that the moon, right, has divergent light in their model, but it gives us the exact same shadows as the sun. So because of that, those who perpetrated this can't be an accident. Those who perpetrated this heliocentric nonsense, they have to have known that. Someone have had to have said it. And that's why the moon is claimed to be of a certain diameter and at a certain distance from a globe Earth. It's all based off here. So the moon, based off its angular size, they had to work out for it to have divergent rays and give us the exact same shadows. The full moon give us the exact same shadows as the sun gives us, right? It has to be that far away and that exact size, because that's what they needed. That's what they needed to support. Go on.
What will you measure to calculate these rays?
Sorry, what's a ray?
It's a mathematical extrapolation from
well, you're going to need a flat Earth in the first place, because
yeah, you're going to measure the angle of incidence of the shadow with the baseline.
Yes, exactly.
So what are you going to need?
Like I was watching. You don't need a flat Earth for that?
Yeah, I was watching 1959 or 1960, don't know, with the children, picking them up from the aftercare. And Nathan's playing something. He's saying, you need a flat plane. You're going to need a flat plane. He said, anybody else? Why did my children yell out in the background, you're going to need a flat plane, for God's sake? It was hilarious. It was right on time. So they're even learning. I forget which one. I don't know if it was 1959 or 1960, but it was like Nathan kept on saying that, and all of a sudden, anybody else want to chip in? Anybody else want to say it? And he was waiting for you guys, and y'all didn't say anything. So my children filled it in, yelling through my ear in the car.
Can't be 1969. We're only on 1961 today. I'm just changing the number now.
No, anyway. I think it was 5960. Don't change it.
1959. Anyway. Yeah, I've just changed the title to QE, unlike our usual video provider, 10th Man, who's looking after a loved one at the moment. We've got a different video. So we've got a video to cover. Fortunately, we have been covering different housekeeping questions each day. So this week will at least conclude with the full housekeeping gamut. Is that the right word? Whatever. The full barrage? I can't think of the right word. The full gambit of housekeeping questions will have been fulfilled by the end of the week with a bit of luck. There's a couple more to go, but we're going to actually move on, as we've done 20 minutes of housekeeping on 2 or 3 questions, which is normally the way of things, but there we go. Today, we're going to be covering this, as always. We are, or I am at least, I don't know about you guys, completely green to this. So I've not watched it, but we will react as we go. And this is called, oh my God, Showing Flat Earthers that Gas Pressure is Next to a Vacuum. I'll spare you my comment on that title, but I'm going to put a link, as always, to, in this case, Dave McKeegan. And if you can let him know, at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me with a nice, clean, positive comment that says, first and foremost, at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, but just let him know we responded to his video. Hopefully you won't immediately delete your comment if you leave something polite, and share the YouTube algorithmic love with this videographer, in the vain hope that he would do the same in return and put a link to my video were he to respond to our comments and critique of his claims that you can attain gas pressure by way of begging the question, sky vacuum being next to it. Anyway, that's the name of the video. It's Dave McKeegan's channel, Showing Flat Earthers that Gas Pressure is Next to a Vacuum, is the name of the title, with a mix of capitals and lowercase. Love it.
Can I just say to the people commenting to go in and say thank you, Triangles, for all the good content.
I'll get a comment removed quick sharp, won't it? Anyway, we're going to get into this. QE has provided the video. Now, he's normally a little bit slumbersome. I'm not very good with my English today. Hey, QE.
Hey, yeah, I got it from your chat. Somebody spoke about it in your chat. I wasn't aware of it, but they were saying, hey, Triangles made a new video on gas pressure without a container, so I snatched it.
perfect segue into my prediction of what will happen. So, back in the day when this was a relatively new argument, and we were getting into the stride of what people would come immediately claim when faced with this argument, my frustration would lead me to disclaim pretty early in the discussion that they are not allowed to immediately beg the question that there is a sky vacuum, and that because there is automatically assumed to be a sky vacuum and we are breathing, therefore gas pressure does exist next to a vacuum because I assume we've got a sky vacuum and we're still breathing. In other words, a begging the question fallacy straight out of the gate. Now, I personally would not allow that, but I'm going to predict, having not watched the video yet, that that is exactly what Dave does. That is to say, he will automatically assume that because we have got a sky vacuum, I assume it, and we are breathing gas pressure, therefore this does exist and is real. There's my proof. We'll see. Don't beg the question even the sky vacuum. If he doesn't, I'm just going to say it now for anybody who chooses to do as our opponents used to in the past. Don't just immediately beg the question of your sky vacuum. Go ahead, Brian.
That was chocolate.
I was going to say, good morning. What's up, Kiwi? I was just going to say, I was going to one up your prediction and say, but before he even begs that question, he's going to show us how you have gas pressure in a container. In other words, he's going to go through what gas pressure is actually, and then go into the begging the question of, oh, and by the way, it works like this next to a vacuum.
So you're saying special pleading fallacy instead of begging the question. So you're saying not only special pleading, you're going to say that his special pleading fallacy will be preceded by a demonstration of how gas pressure actually works, debunking his own claim in the first instance. That's a pretty lofty claim.
Guaranteed, he'll have if he uses some sort of a demonstration, it'll have a box and it'll have some gas pressure in a box showing you how that works with the gas molecules bouncing off the container and all that. He'll preface that, and then he'll go into the nonsense fantasy world of second law of thermodynamics violations.
Gotcha. That's okay. So I've got my prediction. Hold on, let's just get a summary. Hold on. You have another one deck. You can put your prediction into in a second. One deck. My prediction is begging the question. We'll just summarize chocolates as special pleading. What have you got? Go ahead. One deck.
I have one.
I was saying he's going to have to bring the gradients up, the pressure gradient, as if that gets him out of his difficult situation of still having to have a container for the pressure gradient.
Okay, so we've got also another prediction that we'll have an ignorance of delta X. That is to say, he'll say we have a gas pressure gradient, which is to ignore the fact that you'd still require the gas to be at pressure and pressing on something for it to gradiate. Okay, fine. Yeah, an ignorance of delta X. We've got a special pleading, and we've got begging the question. Any more predictions?
I have a prediction.
Go on, Brian.
I predict the containers McKeegan. That's what we might end up calling them. I predict that he's going to show us gas pressure in a container, and then he's going to start convoluting between actual gas pressure inside an actual container and the difference between gas pressure and atmospheric pressure.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Atmo, what now? That's a different begging the question fallacy. That is strictly speaking the same as my prediction, because atmosphere is the assertion that we have a vacuum with a gas pressure that achieves gas pressure in a sphere shape by pure fiat, because you assume there's a sky vacuum. So that is strictly the same as my prediction, but fine. Anybody else?
There's one other part to it.
Go on.
He's going to have to infer a force of gravity.
Okay, yeah, that's got to be on there too. Maybe we'll see. Any more? We're going to start any second. So, no. Okay, once more for all of you watching, just to share the algorithmic love in the vain hope that Dave Triangles McKeegan would return that love if he were to respond. Please let him know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. The link is whizzing its way by in the live stream chat.
Hello everybody, hope you're doing well and thank you for joining us for another video. Today we are tackling the big claim of flat earthers, that according to them, space can't exist. that you can't have gas pressure next to a vacuum without a physical container because otherwise the atmosphere would be sucked out into space.
Who got atmosphere on the bingo card? Brian, bingo. So go on. Well, I was going to say he's immediately begged the question. He's paraphrased our claim that you can't have gas pressure without a container, therefore the sky is not a vacuum, outer space is fake. But he's prefaced it with this begging the question word, atmosphere. Atmo what now? Atmo begging the question, gas in a sphere shape. So within 10 seconds of the video opening, he's already begged the question and Brian called it. Go ahead, Brian.
That's not begging the question. That's a paradox.
It's also, no, but he's utilising it. No, I hate when you do that. Yes, it is a paradox, but it is being utilised to automatically assume that air is in a sphere shape around a sphere-shaped Earth, isn't it? It's still a begging the question, policy. But it is a paradox. You can explain that. You can take that glory because that's still true and it hasn't been covered. Go ahead, QE.
The paradox first. You can't say atmosphere because atmo means air is a gas, sphere is a shape. Gases have no inherent shape. That's over. Paradox.
Perfect.
Space.
He also strawmanned us there.
I was just gonna say, man.
You're probably on the same thing as me. He said,
"Yeah, we all are."
Go on, Brian. You can point out the straw man. Let Brian. Go ahead.
Yeah, he said that we claim that space doesn't exist. No, we don't. We claim heliocentric outer space sky vacuum doesn't exist. That's what we claim.
Yes, to clarify.
There's another faux pas too.
Well, let's just clarify. One second, QE. Just one sec, QE. So, three-dimensional space is real. Outer space, that's the sky vacuum, is not. Go ahead, QE.
Yeah, he also said that we claim that the air should get sucked off.
Did he say that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. No. So gas pressure would disperse. It's the second law of thermodynamics, dispersion. So the gas would fill the space. If you've not heard me say multiple times, the gas would fill the space, that's not the vacuum sucking off Earth.
Yeah, he's still on the old and busted argumentation of the vacuum would suck the air off. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, frequently we get held to task on that, straw man. Like Dumbo idiots like Dave think that vacuums suck. Well, that's because he's thick, and that's how he's phrased it, because he's thick. But he'll have the gall to tell us you think vacuums suck in an argument. That's the type of double standard mentality that these numpties have. Yeah, you think vacuums suck, don't you? No. Yep. No, we don't. No, you think there is a vacuum. But you want to argue about how vacuums work? Prove there's a sky vacuum in violation of natural law. Gas would fill it, we'd all be dead.
However, all
chocolate, then one deck. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, but that's how he came out the gate. He came out the gate saying flat earthers have this big claim that the outer space doesn't exist. No, you have the claim that it does.
Good catch.
So nice trying to flip the burden.
Yeah, good catch. Burden of proof reversal fallacy within 25 seconds. Go on, one deck.
I was just saying he may be talking about a Dyson Hoover, sucking up the air off the carpet, going Dave triangles.
Right, he's watched
be a possibility.
Too many Spaceballs movie rewatches.
That seems to be built around several misconceptions. I mean, for example, if you take a container and you suck all the air out of it and then you open the lid, the air will rush in. So flat earthers argue that atmosphere next to space without a barrier would cause that same effect. Air out of it and then you open the lid, the air will rush in.
So if you've got an area of volume that gas can fill, gas will fill it. So if I turn this 180 degrees and said that this was space in his example, well, if you've got space, as I say, 180 degrees from his depiction, and according to him, this area is going to be vacated to represent a vacuum. Okay, so all of the gas disappears from the area. So now we've got an equivalent, albeit on the ground instead of in the sky, whatever, an area of volume that gas can fill. And according to Dave, gas will fill the space.
Out of it, and then you open the lid, the air will rush in. So flat Earth.
So if the sky was a vacuum, Chocolate called this one, I believe. Right, Chocolate? Bingo.
Yep. There's the box. Told you it was gonna show us a box.
So the gas would fill the space. If there's an area of volume that gas can fill, gas will fill it. So if the sky was like this box, a 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum, then the gas would fill the space. We'd all be dead. Yeah, welcome to fake space. You've just debunked it with the second law of thermodynamics. Well done, Dave McKeegan.
Earthers argue that atmosphere next to space without a barrier.
Worse than that, Nathan.
Atmo what now? Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, he said flat earthers claim that. No, physics claim and show that. Not
Natural
just
law.
flat earthers. It's not just something we made up.
But yeah, it's a law of nature. Second law of thermodynamics describes how gas fills space. It's not flat earthers' claim. It's like when people say, you flat earthers claim that you can get an elevation angle measurement to a star off a flat baseline. You're such idiots. No. You're confusing an argument with celestial navigation with an argument with flat earthers. We're not claiming you measure angles off flat baselines. That's how celestial navigation is done. Your argument's not with me, it's with celestial navigation. In this instance, right on, was that Brian? His argument is not with flat earthers. It's with the second law of thermodynamics. Was that you, Brian? Right on, if it was.
Yes, Nathan.
Would cause that same effect. Not quite the case. And later on, I will show how we can.
Sorry, you said atmosphere and then said it wasn't quite the case when describing atmo what now? Sphere-shaped air? What, the second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to an oxymoron? And? Not quite the case when it's sphere-shaped air. What sphere-shaped air? Atmosphere.
Wait. He said later on he's going to demonstrate it, I think. I think that's what he's going to say.
Get gas pressure next to a vacuum. But first, let's get some basic details straight about what gas pressure is and how it works.
Summarise it on his behalf.
Yep.
Gas pressure is the force exerted on the walls of its container.
Nothing too complicated, though.
Yeah, just summarised it in one sentence.
Relax. Just the kind of thing that you'd learn in high school or on brilliant.org, who have hundreds of classes on all manner of science, maths, and the ration wrong.
Welcome to the next evolution in game.
Brilliant.org.
Made it all the way up to their Einsteinian League. And if you'd like to come and join in, then head on over using my link in the description. Molecules. And these particles are constantly on the move, even in an airtight box. If you take a box, seal it up, and leave it on the side, the air molecules inside will still be moving because they have energy. These moving particles will inevitably crash into things, and just like anything that crashes into something else, when they do, they will exert a pressure force on that object. Now, with air molecules being so small and having hardly any mass, the pressure that gets exerted from a single molecule is minuscule. However, if you have enough molecules hitting a surface at the same time, then the total pressure becomes more and more noticeable.
So far, so good. Any objections? So far, so good, I would say.
I have.
Go on.
I have. He said they have hardly any mass. That's incorrect. Gas, even within the heliocentric model, right, and gas behavior, gas cannot be defined as mass because mass is two things. Pre-Einstein, its mass is given weight via a force of gravity. Post-Einstein is mass is a quantitative measure of inertia. Gas does not display inertia. Inertia requires weight. Gas does not have weight, and inertia it requires non-movement. A moving thing does not have inertia. It has momentum if it has weight, but gases don't have weight. They can't be weighed, right? You can't weigh gas. This thing about putting it in a container, blah blah blah. We went through that before. That's a load of nonsense. You're fooling yourself into thinking you're weighing a gas when you're not. You're only getting a calculation of a possible amount, right, within a container. You're not weighing it. You can't weigh a gas. So mass, right, that he's referring to is given weight via force of gravity. But mass also connects to inertia, and more weight, more inertia. Less weight, less inertia. Gas does not have weight, so it does not and cannot be a mass, even within heliocentrism. So he's completely wrong. There is no such thing as gas having mass. But this is the lead up to him claiming that the atmosphere is a mass that is given weight by a force of gravity. This is where this is going. This is what my prediction on it is.
Where this is going, oh God, why did you have to use those words? Where this is actually going is gas go down, go boom, boom. That's where this is heading.
For example, the air pressure near sea level is around 14.7.
Near what now? Near sea level? Like a level C? Flat Earth required for that level C that we'll be referencing all the topology to. So we're already into describing how flat Earth works with a sea level. Sea level isn't sea curve, is it? So why are you throwing that in there? That makes no sense to me that you'd be throwing in this flat Earth proof. Shout out to Godzilla37. This super chat is for Numpty Dave, but he's going to need a flat screen to read it. That may very well be true. Thank you for the super chat.
I was going to say for more information, see Twangle's previous videos where he tells us all about how you need a flat baseline to measure the Earth. Yep.
Yep. He's just snapping his own wig off. He doesn't even realize it. Poor dumb bastard. No swearing.
Square inch, meaning take a square inch of any surface there and the air will be exerting 14.7 pounds of pressure against it. Now, there are two ways that we can vary.
Where did you get the gas pressure in the first place? Do you see how subtle it was? He's automatically talking about pre-existing gas pressure. Hello? You've just described how gas pressure is already in existence. You're going to need a container already in your example. So I'm going to need to know, given that existing gas pressure he just described with his example, where that was achieved. How did you get that gas pressure in the first place? Oh yeah, you'd need the antecedent consequent relationship of gas pressure needing containment. So to give the example he just gave, there must have been a container for the gas to have existed at pressure.
Vary the pressure. We can
this is where. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that I think he's gonna try to do the okey doke, where instead of saying that gas pressure requires a container, remember they used to do that old and busted. Oh, instead of saying it requires a container, they say it requires a surface, right? So as long as you've got Earth's surface, you could have gas pressure instead of actually having the gas being contained. So it's like the okey doke. So he's gonna tell us now that you don't need a container. Flat earthers are wrong about that. You just need a surface.
Why? Because he started with pre-existing gas pressure that would have required containment. No, I mean, if he does, that won't fly. I've already covered it.
change the density of the air or the temperature of it. If we increase the density of the air, we're adding more molecules of air into a given space, meaning more molecules will be hitting that particular square inch of surface, so the total force exerted on the surface will increase, and thus we will have a higher gas pressure. Or we could also reduce the volume of space available to the same number of molecules.
All of these examples require containment. So every example thus far, for him to detail how gas pressure comes into existence, required containment in all examples. Okay. So you need a container for the gas pressure to be existing. Other than your example that you gave earlier, you didn't detail it. You left out the fact that your atmosphere was pre-existing gas pressure without any description of a container. That's a problem because it wouldn't be at gas pressure. Like your examples here, Dave.
Which is also increasing the density. If we were to have kept the density of molecules the same, but
inside the container that is required,
instead increase the temperature, then the
of the containment,
molecules would then have more energy, and so they'd be moving faster, which would then raise the force that they would exert and
on the walls of the container,
thus increase the pressure.
On the walls of the container.
Kind of like a pressure cooker.
Which is a container.
So gas pressure is...
Say again, Neil?
It's like they always leave out the containment part. They talk about pressure, but they leave out that it needs containment.
Except when they show you the box, which they absolutely need to show you how gas works.
So
And the
far,
pressure cooker.
lots of examples of how gas pressure requires containment from Dave Triangles McKeegan.
Merely the average force of gas molecules colliding with physical surfaces.
The walls of the container.
Now, flat earthers have argued you can't have gas pressure without a container.
It's an antecedent-consequent relationship based on the definition of what gas pressure is, the force exerted on the walls of the container. Do we need to cite NASA? Do we need to get NASA involved to have them define it exactly as follows? The force exerted on the walls of the container? Because that's how NASA define it. You're saying flat earthers and then contradicting how it's defined as gas pressure. So we seem to be at a bit of an impasse here because you're strawmanning us and misrepresenting us and then going to, debunk the misrepresentation of what flat earthers say? No, we're all pretty clear based on our descriptions, your descriptions, and NASA's descriptions of what gas pressure is and what is required to have it. Containment.
But removing the container doesn't mean that the air that was inside no longer has pressure. It means the air has equalized to match the ambient pressure surrounding it.
So if we had an ambient vacuum around us, the gas we're breathing would equalize with the vacuum and we would be at 10 to the minus 17 torr at sea level then, Dave.
So if you take a brand new packet of balloons and you take one out, the balloon isn't inflated, nor is it sealed. But then
it's already got pressure though. Regardless of how flat that balloon is, some pressure is still inside the balloon and outside the balloon at equal measure because it's already in existence in pre-existing gas pressure when you buy a balloon. Now, is this example already starting because you're going to describe how the balloon behaves in gas pressure that you're not going to detail how you've achieved it if it's next to a vacuum that it would be dispersing into based on your last example? Because it seems like you've just detailed how gas would disperse to equalise and are now going on to describe a different container that already has pre-existing gas in atmosphere oxymoron. That's what seems like's happening.
There is still air pressure inside. The air pressure inside will be equal to the air pressure outside.
Where did you get that gas pressure from?
Exactly.
So we've got gas pressure. And we've had multiple examples from you of how containment's required to achieve it. And how if we didn't have the container, it would disperse into outer space. Equalise. So in your example, where do we get this gas pressure from to begin with? If the sky is a vacuum, the gas would fill the space, based on your examples.
At about 14 psi.
Where'd you get that from?
As you inflate the balloon...
Hold on. We're moving straight past the achievement of gas pressure. That's your argument. So we're just starting with the gas pressure that you argue could be in existence with a vacuum around it for your example for how that's possible without detailing how this guy has got air in his lungs. You've just told us how gas would disperse and equalise. Why is this man breathing? Where did you get this gas pressure from? Go ahead, whoever that was.
Nathan, he's actually not after doing that. This is a sneaky thing he's doing. He's not after detailing how the pressure is formed. He's only talked about pressure. He's talked about how if there's more gas molecules and more temperature, there'll be more pressure and more density of gas, blah, blah, blah. But he's not after actually talking and actually detailing how the creation of the pressure happened. He hasn't done that yet.
Yeah,
yeah.
Just let me talk to Brian. Yes, I'm acutely aware of that. That's why I'm highlighting it.
You got a rocket surgeon out in chat, Nicholas Pitts. It says there is a theory that a container is required, but it has not been verified yet.
Oh, Nick, he's the high IQ guy.
Have him join. Have him explain it and show how gas has mass. Go ahead, go on and join Nicholas Pitts.
If Nicholas Pitts joins, which is unlikely, we will clear the airwaves and he will get uninterrupted descriptions of how gas pressure is a theory. Okay, yeah, whatever.
You still have 14 psi pushing against the outside of it.
Not without containment, you don't.
but the pressure inside will now increase, let's say to 16 psi. So we have a 2 psi difference between inside and outside.
And how have we got the gas pressure to begin with? You'd need a container. So in order to be at 14.7 psi and create a differential inside a balloon, you're first going to need the prerequisite of gas pressure, and that needs the antecedent consequent relationship of gas pressure pressing on a container.
Now, the pressure difference between...
Don't we have a citation for that?
I did give
Without
NASA.
the balloon, there
give
could be
NASA.
no pressure?
Well, that's conspiracy cats. Without the balloon, there can be no pressure. Without the container, there can be no pressure.
Inside the balloon and outside won't shift by much due to the stretchy nature of the latex balloon. Pressure inside will push the balloon out and cause it to enlarge slightly, which will decrease the pressure until you put more air into it. It will continue to inflate in reaction to the increased air pressure inside until it reaches a point where the balloon itself just can't handle it and it will burst. But that doesn't necessarily come from putting more air inside the balloon.
That's exactly what it's from.
If we didn't inflate the balloon fully...
So it's not when we inflate the balloon because of too much pressure inside the balloon, because if we don't inflate the balloon, is this guy nuts?
We tied it off and placed it in a vacuum chamber, the pressure inside the balloon would remain the same, pushing outwards, but we could take the air out of the chamber, which would then reduce how much pressure was pushing back against the balloon, and the balloon would inflate just as before.
So if this balloon inside this chamber was Earth, and surrounding Earth was a vacuum, and we removed the balloon so there was, like your Earth, nothing containing the gas inside this would disperse equally into the available volume then. So this debunks Earth as having gas in a sky vacuum, because the gas would fill the space.
That's not what he said.
Describing how to burst balloons by using the principles of gas pressure. The very principles he's then going to deny for his ball. It's a very strange analogy he's presenting. You're showing me how gas, whether it's a differential and you've taken it into a vacuum chamber to create a larger differential or blowing it up more, you're describing how, and what happens when it bursts? The gas will fill the volume. I'm at a loss as to why he would present further citation that disproves his gas go down, go boom boom theory. That he doesn't.
I know what he's doing.
Containment. That's what his ultimate. Sorry, I know I'm pausing too much, right? But his ultimate point is there is he's trying to link it to a ball off that it doesn't require containment. And in all his examples, he's got two containers there, just to show that he doesn't require containment. I'm done, Brian.
Sorry, Adam, for stepping on you. I thought you were after finishing. No, I know what he's doing. He's right. First of all, ruining his argument by placing a balloon into an only half inflated balloon into a vacuum chamber, and showing by when he brings the outside pressure down that the balloon will expand because the pressure inside will want to fill the available lower pressure volume. But the only reason that there's pressure inside is because he has a container. But what he's going to try and do, right, is equate a force of gravity with the material of the balloon. That's what he's going to try and do. How a force of gravity keeps the air, gives the air weight, and then causes the air to stay at pressure, bouncing off of the surface of a globe Earth.
Yeah, we're getting there. Gas go down, go boom boom. We will get there.
As shown in this experiment by Simon Foster. Alternatively, we could increase the pressure in the chamber to more than 14 psi, and the balloon would deflate because there is now more force pushing on the balloon than there is pushing out.
At TradePoint, get 20.
You may have also seen this. If you've ever been on a plane and you've ordered any kind of sealed snack, such as a tube of Pringles, other snacks are available, the lid of those always are ballooned out because they were sealed flat at ground level. But the cabin pressure at cruising altitude is lower, so the air inside has less force countering it. This actually relates to another misconception I see flat earthers sometimes make when they talk about like the ISS, especially following the Titan submersible disaster. Because they argue, how come you can't get a submersible down a few kilometers underwater, and yet you can have spacecraft with relatively thin walls surviving 250 kilometers high up in the vacuum of space?
No, we definitely wouldn't be making that argument. We would point out that you can't have a tin can in a sky vacuum because the gas we breathe would disperse into the area this tin can is claimed to be in. So while other amateur flat earthers, as you stereotype us with, we're flat earthers, we would not claim, how can you have this submarine satellite in space? No, space isn't real. It's like arguing about how you could have the gas lamp work in Narnia. No, we don't argue about how gas reaches the lamp in Narnia and the gas distribution infrastructure of Narnia. We don't argue about that because Narnia is not real. Therefore, this, whatever it is, isn't in a sky vacuum. Now, is there a light in the sky named ISS? Yeah, there is. Is there a stage show with men on high wires also named the ISS? Yeah, there is, yeah. Is there a sky vacuum? No. Is the claimed stage show that professes to be in a sky vacuum real? No, definitely not, because it's claimed to be in a sky vacuum. If that little stage show was real, like Narnia, we'd all be dead. Because like Dave just detailed to you, the audience, gas disperses into space. So the gas we're breathing, unless contained like his balloon, would disperse into the available volume. That would be space in his paradigm, and we'd all be dead. Now, we're not. We do have gas pressure. That means we must have containment. It's a prerequisite. It's an antecedent. So if we haven't got containment, we'd all be dead in his paradigm. He's detailed why. So this isn't real. It's claimed to be in the sky vacuum. Go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, I thought you were finished when I thought with Adam. There was a break there. I'm just going to steelman his argument. I think that's the correct term, and then destroy it. Because in an airplane, right, they can only have the pressure at 11 to 12 psi at about 6 miles up. The reason they have a pressure of 11 to 12 psi and not 14.7 is because the outside pressure is so much lower than the inside pressure then that the 14.7 psi will cause structural damage, internal structural damage, which could result in a total loss of pressure within the airplane because it could cause, obviously, just weakness within the plane over time would cause the something to blow, and you'd have a situation where all the pressure inside would leave and equalize with the outside. So they have to keep it at about 11 to 12 psi. Now, to fly any higher than that, which would be military type altitudes, you have to train, right, and be trained by the military to handle those low pressures. And you also need oxygen masks, like fighter jets and stuff like that.
I'm really sorry to stop you, Brian. Fascinating though this is. This is going somewhere.
No, it is going somewhere, Nathan, right? It is going somewhere. Just because he had to have a little attack on us concerning, right? Stupid flat earthers do miss the point between submarines and ISS, right? They do miss the point in that argument. For the ISS, the reason they can't bring it to any lower than 11 or 12 psi in a normal commercial flight is because if they start bringing it lower, right, what happens is the people will go unconscious, right? The cabin is often, I think the cabin where the pilots are is at higher pressure. I think a little bit higher than where the passengers and crew are. But the problem is that where the ISS is claimed to be, right, the amount of pressure they'd have to have on the inside, right, would be so low that it would kill you. Just that pressure on the inside of what they say the ISS is would be so low that you'd just be dead. Because if they had, let's just say, the air pressure on the inside of the ISS that they have on the inside of a jet fighter, then that inside pressure would explode out. It would fill the way lower.
Okay, we got it. And there's going to be members of the audience that hate me for undermining you, but it has to be done. So let me get it straight. You're saying that the differential on a commercial airliner is kept limited so that you don't overpressurize the plane, and they've calculated out how much structural rigidity they need versus the pressure differential, and if they tried to maintain the pressure that we have at ground level, it would be too much for the structure, or it would be too weight, or whatever the way it calculates out. However, on the ISS, out in Narnia, Aslan's got to have his higher pressure in the cockpit of the ISS, and Aslan's declared that it's perfectly acceptable because they've got super grade, NASA grade titanium alloys that can sustain the difference out in Narnia, says Aslan, Brian. They've got complicated titanium alloys out in Narnia, says Aslan. What say you?
No, if you look at what the ISS is actually made of, it's
aluminum.
Yeah,
it's a very, very complicated aluminum, mined only in the mines of Narnia.
Well, Nathan, I can actually add a citation that makes your point from them. So they say normal air pressure on the ISS is 14.7. While members of the ISS crew could stay healthy even with the low pressure, with the pressure at a lower level, the special Narnia equipment on the station is very sensitive to this pressure, and so that's why it has to be at 14.7. So they even tell you they're not even going to lower it because they need special Narnia equipment to justify it. So you can't argue with it.
See?
I bet you they keep the special Narnia equipment on the outside.
The point being...
Some of it.
The point being, for every rebuttal from Dave Twangles McKeegan in respect to gas pressure not requiring containment, he has had multiple examples that detail how gas pressure operates, how it's achieved, and the containment that is required in order to achieve it. That is his rebuttal so far. Now, when we detail why ISS is not real, regardless of any Globebuster style anomaly hunting, we can just detail that the area, the space it's claimed to be in, is Narnia. You can't have gas pressure, which we are breathing, without containment. And the heliocentric model has atmosphere, oxymoron, sphere-shaped air wrapped around a ball, not obeying a law of nature and dispersing into the area of volume that Dave himself has detailed it would do when he described it equalizing in his own words. Well, the gas we're breathing would equalize with space. That would mean we were at 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum at sea level in his paradigm, based on his descriptions of what gas pressure is. That debunks everything about the ISS. We don't need to detail the exotic Narnia-based, Narnia-mined materials used to achieve the claim to be 14.7 psi because of the sensitive equipment in Narnia.
No, that's all wrong. They have no special equipment. It's just a different design because unlike airplanes, the ISS is not going through continual pressure changes and continual air-based friction and vibration, which planes have to deal with. That's also why they can have their equipment on the outside, except, we'll still be risky with micrometeorites and all that, because they can design the whole thing more to really emphasize keeping the low pressure outside or the pressure in comparison to the airplane, which has to be durable against the elements.
Out in Narnia, the elements out in Narnia aren't conducive to require the exotic materials to be any more special than we have on Earth. Because out in Narnia, the special pleading for the materials needed out in Narnia are different. No,
they're not. They're the same. They still, even in Narnia, require containment, as Dave's claiming. On his magic ISS, the only way to maintain his pressure for the astronauts and the special equipment is to have containment.
In Narnia.
In Narnia, even when he goes to Narnia, he can't defy the effects of entropy. So to make his astronauts breathe, even in Narnia has to have a containment.
I'm going to go with that one. Everyone else can stop.
ISS.
Yeah, everyone else, that's going to be the end. Not the end of the show, but the end of this point. Adam is the winner. Right. So, like previously, when detailing the containment that is required to detail the effects of gas pressure on the walls of a container, the ISS in this Narnia example of a sky vacuum that defies the second law of thermodynamics and would have gas dispersing into it from Earth, leaving us all dead. His ISS example also would succumb to entropy, hence requires containment for the men in Narnia. So even the example from Narnia, as Adam puts it, also requires entropy to be thwarted by way of a container for the gas pressure that the astronauts in Narnia are claimed to be breathing. Good point, Adam. You win.
No.
Yes, but
No,
No, we're moving on. No, not yet. We're moving on.
No, Ryan's going to be no. I'm going to be no as well and say that the ISS is designed officially, whether the people that were designing it knew that it couldn't be possible or not. It was designed very differently from an airplane. Fact.
To work in Narnia, which we are going to move on from, and everyone else, please hold your tongues.
Now, vacuums aren't some magical force that pulls things away.
No. Vacuum would just be the area of volume that the gas we're breathing here on Earth in a heliocentric model would fill and leave us all dead.
They're simply areas with no matter in them. The pressure of one area is irrelevant. The key importance...
Sorry, irrelevant. When you're describing dispersion in the second law of thermodynamics, that's certainly not the case. It's certainly not the case in all of your examples where you described it occurring. Why is it suddenly not the case when you've just exampled it 6 times?
Is the pressure difference between inside and outside.
Of the container?
But I thought he said it was irrelevant.
What,
now
the differential? No, pay closer attention, Arwin. I was too quick to jump the gun by saying the difference in inside the container pressure versus outside the container pressure is what's really relevant here, according to Dave.
Okay, but that still requires 2 containers.
Well, 1, but yeah.
The submersible was sealed at sea level, so the air
See what now? Sea level? Flat Earth required.
Inside was 14 psi. The water pressure at depth...
What does PSI stand for?
I noticed earlier he kept he says the term PSI and then he'll say on the surface. He's alluding or not using the word container a lot. I've noticed he's used the word surface to replace container.
Oh my God!
I said it before.
Really?
That's the okey doke.
So
Yeah, because that was my prior point, Arwin. Yes, really. I said it before, Adam.
They weren't here.
Why does it work in their heads, though? Why do they say the Earth is the container? It's like, no, that's on one side of it. Like, I don't get it.
Because it wouldn't work that way. So they just flip it and pull a abracadabra and just say, all you require is a surface. You don't need a container.
It wasn't rhetorical.
That's the okey doke, right?
It wasn't rhetorical. What does PSI stand for?
So
square inch.
Square inch of what?
The surface.
The surface of what?
Oh, the container.
But I mean, if he says that the Earth's surface is the container, does that mean that he's claiming that a flat plane is the container?
At sea level.
He just said the surface.
Yeah, he's being careful. He's not going to say the surface is the container. He's just saying all you require is a surface. We've heard it before. How many times have they come here and told us that? Right?
Many
you don't require. You don't need a container. You just need an area or a surface. How many times we've heard that shit?
Yeah, but that's
based on what?
Let me just answer Chocolate. Yes, that's correct, Chocolate. However, as a direct result of that, our carefully phrased housekeeping question is put to them, the positive claimant that the sky is a vacuum. That would be to say, how do you achieve gas pressure without a container? And if they say, oh, you just need a surface. Okay, show.
That's how you look up.
Yeah, what did I say at the start of this, Neil? No.
We have
Arwin.
pressure. It must work.
Arwin. Neil, can you repeat that statement? Go ahead.
Yeah, they'll tell you look up like Brenza. Like he did too. This guy did it too.
Right. And what did I say at the start of this in reference to years gone by when people were shouted at for begging the question? You don't just infer that we do have gas pressure and the sky is a vacuum. Voila! Gas pressure without a container. It's not filling my fundamentalist religious belief of a sky vacuum I've not proven. Therefore, sky vacuum proven. No containment required. In my fundy belief, I just point at the sky. Yeah, you don't beg the question here, though, do you, Neil?
No begging a question.
Go on, Arwin.
No, I was just trying to waste your time, that's all. Right? Surface, flat plane. So, yeah. I mean, if it only requires a surface to have gas pressure, well, then wouldn't that basically infer that you require a flat plane to have gas pressure, according to them, then?
Not necessarily, but it would probably lead to if they were implying a globe from it.
Right. A globe based on a flat plane measurement.
Okay, but we're not there yet. Let's just... Okay.
6,000 psi, meaning that hull was trying to withstand a pressure difference of almost 6,000 pounds per square inch. The air pressure on board the ISS is 40.
Whoa. We've got a second law of thermodynamics violation on screen. So, according to Dave McKeegan, cuts to his fundamentalist religious belief of a sky vacuum next to gas pressure. Now, you see, all of your diagrams showed how you'd have equalization in line with entropic law. That's the second law of thermodynamics. Whereas in this diagram, we've got a violation of the descriptions you gave prior. This is claimed to be 10 to the minus 17 torr. This is claimed to be high pressure gas. Now, as per your previous descriptions, the gas would fill this space. That's what gas does. You showed it with all of your examples. Now you're going to detail how we're going to need pressure inside this in Narnia. This isn't a spacecraft in space, because the space would be an area the gas could fill. Why would you be babbling on about it? Oh, of course, because if you talk about the gas pressure in reference to the ISS, automatically assuming that the sky is a vacuum, maybe no one will notice that you've got a second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum in your description of the pressure in the ISS. What about this pressure? What's containing it? That's all of the pressure here beneath the ISS in your sky vacuum Narnia depiction. How's that achieving gas pressure? Because that's the point of this argument. Answer, it wouldn't be. This area would be an area for it to equilibrate. Yeah? That's what you'd have. It would equalize, right, Dave? Yeah, but it isn't in this depiction, so it's just Narnia. It's nonsense. It's a cartoon. It's fake. It's debunked by me right now.
14 psi. The outside air pressure is almost zero, meaning
that the gas below at 14.7 psi would be filling it in line with the laws and descriptions you gave earlier. Just ignoring that bit, right? Just going to beg the question that it's still a sky vacuum.
Hull is only having to withstand a pressure difference of...
Really? What's withstanding the pressure difference in regards to that zero pressure versus the actual pressure beneath it in the clouds at 14.7 psi? What's containing that?
14 psi.
What he's about to...
Go on, Brian.
Sorry, what he's trying to do here is somehow wrangle out how the ISS is at 14.7 psi, presuming a sky vacuum, and that even if they open the door of the ISS, the air pressure wouldn't instantly go out; it would go out slowly. That's what he's trying to say. It would be a slow drop in air pressure as opposed to an instant drop. And that's when he's going to bring in gravity then with the globe.
For reference, a carbonated drink in a can has an internal pressure of between 30 to 50 psi, meaning that thin aluminium can is withstanding a pressure difference of up to around 36 psi without any problems.
So
yeah, because it's a container.
Because it's yeah, well said.
Anyway, flat Earth is
14.7 outside pressure against it.
Yes,
that's what he's not talking about.
And it's a liquid.
Exactly, and it's a liquid. Yeah.
take this simplified behavior of ideal gases and they extrapolate that if gas expands in all directions to fill the available...
Sorry, as you exampled, if... So we say this, you just said this, you gave plenty of examples of it. Why are you now saying that we say this to defy it when you've just said it in all of your examples? It sounds like you're about to double speak with your own examples.
Available space, then on a globe...
When we say those things, it has to be wrong, but he can still use it for his explanations.
What, containers? Over and over again?
Yeah.
In space, the gas would expand to fill space itself.
What, like you described with all of your examples, you mean?
Not quite the case, though, because we have gravity to pull molecules back down.
Ding, ding, ding. There it is.
So gas go down, go boom, boom, right? So you're saying that the gas goes up to the Kármán line and then in defiance of the second law of thermodynamics says, I will not obey this natural law. In fact, I have decided to burn my bra in defiance of this natural law because a man named Einstein said there's a pseudo-Riemannian space-time bending as a result of the uneven distribution of mass. I mean, it's not a force, but you know what? I'm going to think of it as a force, and I am going to go down after eating quite a few cakes. Back down, go boom, boom.
Yep. And even after you were thought of as gravity as a force, then you'd still have to realize that in the scale of forces, gravity used to be considered one of the weakest forces in the universe versus entropy, gas pressure expansion being arguably the most powerful force in the universe. Yeah, so it still doesn't work, even if you think of gravity as a force.
But it isn't.
Permission to debunk all this?
Well, he's just said it pulls. Gravity pulls the gas. No, gravity's not a force. It hasn't been a force for 107 years. The current rhetoric, debunked by quantum mechanics, although currently in effect with heliocentric believers, is that gravity is the bending of space-time. That's the effect. The claimed cause in pseudo-force space, that's Einsteinian geometry, is the uneven distribution of mass, causing the warping of space and time, a pseudo-dimension invented by Einstein. Now, this warping of the fourth dimension, called gravity, is not a force and does not pull, in quotes, gas. Dave is a clown and does not know what gravity is.
I agree. You're correct, but I'm just saying, even if they would mistakenly somehow think of gravity as a force, then still what they think it's doing still wouldn't be possible because it simply wouldn't be strong enough.
Okay, so to acknowledge what Arwin's saying, if the gas was sentient and decided to defy gas behavior described by the second law of thermodynamics, then it could, sentient gas, think of gravity as a force, but it still wouldn't behave in the way that Dave's describing when the sentient gas thought of bending space-time as a force. Right, Arwin?
Well, I wasn't necessarily thinking that the gas doesn't have to be sentient. the
you drive me crazy with that.
But yes.
Go ahead, Neil.
Can I debunk all of this, please?
You can have to Neil. Oh, you did say that a while back. Go ahead, Brian, then Neil.
Neil can go first if you want, or I'm just going to completely
Neil,
destroy
go
all
ahead.
of it.
I was just saying, Owen drives me crazy when he goes into that. He did it on flatzoids one time, too.
Do it all the time. It's my thing.
Wonderful. Go ahead, Brian. Wonderful. That's so interesting and informative for the audience. Go ahead, Brian. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, what Dave is claiming, right, even though it's 108 years out of date within his own heliocentric model, which shows how idiotic Dave is, what he's claiming is that a force of gravity, right, gives weight to a mass, and that the air, his atmosphere, paradox begging the question fallacy, is a mass, and that mass is given weight by a force of gravity, which means that if we weigh something in air and we weigh that same thing in a vacuum, that the weight of that object in a vacuum must be less. But unfortunately for Dave and all of the heliocentric model, objects weigh more in a vacuum, ending every single bit of heliocentrism. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Gas go down, go boom, boom, right? Force of gravity. No, Dave.
Now, I am not going into a whole gravity argument now.
No, you just inferred it, and you're not going to back it up with anything. No, you don't need to. We've just undone it at its core.
That needs a separate video.
Can you not rumpus every word of this? But go ahead.
Oh, okay. Right.
Go ahead.
He just brought it up, but he's not going to actually get into it. That's all.
That's what I said.
Is to say we don't always need a physical barrier to contain things.
Yeah, you do. It's an antecedent consequent relationship between the container and the pressure of the gas pressing on it. The container, that is. Now, what you've just done is make a baseless assertion. Because what we actually ask is how you can have gas pressure without a container. That would require you to demonstrate it beyond your fundamentalist religious belief that the sky is a vacuum.
That small globe, for example, has no physical...
Go ahead.
Sorry. Can I point out a slight flaw in their mainstream narrative? Because they apparently have citations coming from their side that debunk what he's saying. So I've read this out on here before. It's techtarget.com. What is a gas? The second paragraph. A gas has no fixed shape or volume. The atoms or molecules that make up the gas fill the container that holds them. The gas expands until it is uniformly distributed throughout the container, and this is the important part, even in the presence of gravity. If not confined to a container, a gas disperses into space. End of citation.
Container holding it there, and yet it's floating. What you need is forces for containment.
George Musa, Scientific American. Gravity is not a force. Brian Cox.
Wait a second. Hold on.
I tell you what, it needs several citations being interrupted by Neil, because this will definitely be more important than a citation from Brian Cox. Go ahead, Neil.
Go ahead, finish. I'm just.
I was. Don't tell me to go ahead. You're going to really piss me off fast. Yeah, I was till you interrupted. Now I'm giving you permission after you've interrupted. Go ahead.
I didn't interrupt you. Stop talking, and it wasn't a breath. I just want to say he spent the whole beginning of the show explaining to us how we need containment, and now he's saying we don't need containment. Okay, that checks out.
It's a baseless assertion.
And gravity is a force. I think...
No, it's not. I'll give a different quote, hopefully not interrupted. Professor Brian Cox, there isn't really a force of gravity at all. End quote. So, no, Dave.
Flat earthers also have this conception that the globe atmosphere is simply atmosphere...
Atmo what now? Sorry, this sphere-shaped air with no containment, arbitrarily taking a curved shape? Well, gas doesn't behave that way, Dave. Yeah, you can draw your crude diagrams, but that definitely isn't how gas behaves. You're going to need to give us a physical demonstration of gas pressure without a container, in defiance of every example you've given.
Atmosphere, and then...
Atmosphere, oxymoron. Sphere-shaped air. Air doesn't take the shape of a sphere, Dave. It takes the shape of its containment.
And suddenly vacuum. And it's not. As you increase your altitude above sea level, the air pressure begins to decrease, and...
Air pressure decreases? So what, the force the gas exerts on the walls of its containment decreases? So who had Delta X? Who called that on their bingo card? Somebody had Delta X.
One deck, Nathan.
One deck. Ding, ding, bingo. Delta X. So ignoring that gas pressure gradients also have the included antecedent consequent relationship of gas pressure, if you say the pressure bit quick enough, you can appeal to delta X, a gas pressure gradient, and describe how it gradiates to become a second law of thermodynamics violation where it just stops dispersing into the sky vacuum. What burns its bra and comes back down, go boom, boom, right? With the force that's not a force. I mean, you can think of it as a force, end quote, George Musa, Scientific American. But there isn't really a force of gravity at all, end quote, Professor Brian Cox.
This continues the higher you go. This happens because gravity is pulling air molecules down.
Gas go down, go boom, boom. So this looks like rain. Yeah, that's how liquids behave, Dave. You see how these big balls look like water droplets going down? Yeah, that's not how gas behaves. You see, every single example, can someone remember 8 minutes and 27 seconds? Every single example that you gave prior had gas in a container.
Also reduce the volume of space available to the same number of molecules.
So that would be the availability of space to the molecules of gas, Dave. What did I say? 8:27. See how slick I can be.
Yes.
Molecules down.
No, Dave. Gas doesn't go down. As you exampled when you showed it bouncing in all directions in that box a moment ago. You see, gas doesn't go down, Dave. It expands in all directions into the availability of volume. But you see, you with a cartoon seem to be defying several examples, one I just managed to hit on by scrolling randomly back, where it didn't go down. Was it going down in your box earlier? No. Gas doesn't go down, go boom, boom like bouncy balls, Dave. Gas expands in all directions. If the sky was a vacuum, an area of volume for the gas to fill, we'd all be dead.
But then as more molecules are pulled down, the density...
Right, are they pulled down? Question for the panel. Where is gas produced?
Ground level.
Right, Dave seems to think it's falling from the friggin' sky.
Right, in space.
Right, Dave, do you think that there are gas-producing factories in the sky pouring more and more solid bouncy ball gases onto the ground? No, you're getting confused with rain. Liquid rain does that. Gases, on the other hand, are produced at ground level and make their way up, Dave. I mean, I thought you would be at least educated to the standard of a 7-year-old that was taught about the water cycle, where you understand that gases are going up, not falling down from the gas-producing factories in the sky. Go down, go boom, boom like bouncy balls. No, Dave. Go on, whoever it is, and then I'll shout out a couple of super chats. Okay.
I was just saying, doesn't he have to demonstrate it? If he
This is his demonstration.
Gravity's pulling it down. Demonstrate it.
This is it, Neil. On screen now. I mean, at least Thunder Clown managed to pour some bouncy balls into a fish tank to give a visual depiction of what he says gas does. I mean, this isn't even of the same standard of actual bouncy balls go down, go boom, boom. These are the same balls that he used in his other cartoons, bouncing around in all directions, now falling down uniformly from the sky, that are producing these gases. What a clown. Shout out to Godzilla, who says, come on, folks, someone's got to help pay for Nathan's utility bills. I nominate chocolate. No, chocolate's hard up. Help chocolate. He's got a GoFundMe going. Also, shout out to Lumpy Gas in a Vacuum. Thank you, Godzilla, by the way. Really appreciate the support. Also, shout out to Lumpy Gas in a Vacuum. Says, thanks, Nathan. I don't know why I'm getting so much love. But thank you for the super chats. Hit me up on PayPal if you really want to support me. Also, here, Parwin and chocolate. We're all poor. Anyway, enough of our bleatings and e-beggings. Let's get on with this.
Oh, hold on. Wasn't chocolate like on another platform? Not even what you said? What is it again?
Look, we're all dirty e-beggars. What's your point?
Gifts and go.
Gifts and go. That was the one.
Gifts and go. Yeah, indeedy. I'm sure someone will stick the link to. And indeed, it's before I've even said the words. Divergent Droids there. Put in the Gifts and go link. So yeah, please do support chocolate. It's hit hard times. Another shout out to Retro Bill. He says, Dave, how the heck did the gas go up in the first place? Right on, Retro Bill. Yeah, you're all of like mind in the chat. I love it. Absolutely epic. Let's just have a listen to what he's got out. else to say, though.
Density increases, which increases the pressure. And then pulling more down becomes harder and harder.
Pulling more down becomes harder and harder. There's a soundbite for you.
If you've ever taken a syringe filled with air and blocked the end of it and tried pushing it shut, you'll know what I mean. Pushing it at first is fairly easy, but as the pressure inside increases, you require more and more force to push it further and further in, because you always need to have more force on the outside pushing it in than there is
inside the container.
The syringe is a container.
What do all these things have in common?
Oh,
So
man,
far,
it's
we've
only
got
the
a
seventh
syringe.
container he's used. Go ahead, Chocolate, sorry.
No, I mean, so far we've got a syringe, a balloon, a pressure cooker. Am I missing anything?
ISS in Narnia.
Oh, the ISS in Narnia. What do all these things have in common?
They're all containers.
What he's trying to get at, what he's trying to get at is a gradual gradient, because their force of gravity is fighting against the natural behavior of the gas to fill the available lower pressure volume of heliocentric outer space. But objects weigh more in a vacuum. That is the end of that. If you understand what that means and the simplicity of it, then it would be impossible to continue believing in a heliocentric model.
Wait. Does gas have mass? Says Matthew Eastman via the super chat.
No, it can't.
Nope.
Gas is given weight by a force of gravity.
What's
Gas,
mass?
weight involves mass. Presently is defined as a quantitative measure of inertia. Gas does not display inertia because gas does not have weight. More weight, more inertia. Less weight, less inertia. No weight, no inertia. So even within the heliocentric model at present, gas is not a mass.
He has actually
cannot
using.
be-
Hold on, he didn't use it in that context though, did he? He would use it. It's an equivocation either way because it's got two descriptions, right? But you gave it earlier with the. You didn't say this, but describing it as the amount of stuff in something, aka mole. Well, he gave that description, i.e., he's working on the Newtonian basis that gravity is a force. Ergo, he wouldn't be describing it as inertia, would he? If he was to define it, which he probably couldn't. Let's be honest.
Well, you can't mention mass without, you can't. As soon as you went outside of mole in chemistry, as soon as you mention mass, you were inferring weight, right, from a heliocentric point of view. But I was just in general, because you're literally in a heliocentric paradigm when you use the word mass, you're inferring weight and inertia.
Yep.
Inertia is because of weight, and weight is because mass is given weight by a force of gravity.
I get that.
If you take a force of gravity away, mass is a quantitative measure of inertia. Now, gas, right, does not have weight, so cannot and does not display inertia.
Yeah, I get that. And you're absolutely right. But he doesn't know that because he's not made that equivocation yet. I mean, he might do it if you pushed him. But I'm saying in this example, he's got gravity as a force. Anyway, it's a minor point. You're right.
It's an absolute bonehead.
Yeah, I know he's a bonehead. That's what I'm trying to say. You're flexing your intellectual. Hold on, Owen. Brian, yes, you are correct. And you're flexing your prowess in terms of your exemplary understanding of this. But he's nowhere near that, is he? He's just a Dumbo. Anyway, I'm going to shout out another super chat. 30 containers later, no container. Says Michael Carr.
That's what I said.
But I just wanted to add, I've made that a big topic on my channel, that gas has no mass. But to be more specific, it's gas within its expanded state, right? Because if you highly compress gas, then it will give a slight weight differential in a container, right? If it's really compressed, because, well, that density of that air within that container is going to be more dense than the air that surrounds the container. And thus it will be calculated, be measured to have that weight, but it still doesn't have mass in an expanded
You're
state.
absolutely correct. And hold on. I'll let Adam expand on this if he's still around. But yeah, it's a ludicrous notion because the concept that you're trying to use, if you try and let's say you walk into a shop and go, I want 10 pounds of helium. And they go, okay, right, here's an empty container. There's nothing in it. I'm going to put it on the scale, weigh it, and then add the gas until it says 10 pounds, more than it did when torn or took when you press the tear button. Okay, so we all understand that that is something that can be used. However, the principle that's being applied, if you break it down, is how much does this solid weighed in air weigh when I weigh air in a container? That's how the principle's being described, so that you, the layman, can understand with the concept of how much stuff weighs in air when you're buying a gas.
Yep, you can't weigh gas without a container, effectively.
Yeah, exactly.
Worse than that, though, what Arwen said is correct, because you're actually creating a greater density of gas within the container than the density of the air outside, and a greater pressure. But the thing about it is there's two other things happening. You have the fact that gas is compressible, means you don't know how much you're actually weighing, right? And this is why in chemistry, 1 mole of carbon dioxide and 1 mole of carbon monoxide is the same thing. Yes, they're two completely different densities of gas. And you also have, due to high concentration, you will have a small amount of phase change happening at the base of the container. So you will have a very small amount of liquefied gas, and it will be gases that are, and Adam explained it this way before, but will be liquefying and unliquefying, right, with the pressure. But it's only a temporary thing. So you don't know how much is in there. So you think you're getting the exact same, let's say, what they call weight, which is a linear downward vector force of carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. When you're not, there's no way you can get the exact same of them and think you have the same amount.
Yeah, but
because one is less dense than the other, naturally.
Sorry, but you can calculate it, though. You can derive how much it is based on the pressure the foreknowledge of the material that the gas is. If you know that, then
look,
you can
stop, please stop. Hello. Yes, we can get into the wrangle-dangle of these conventions all day long, and it's fascinating, but I just don't want to do that. Yes, there are a lot of different conventions that be cross-referenced, and in some instances, without me nitpicking, there's things that are being detailed incorrectly. But the first part of Brian's little interlude there was also described by Dave McGeegan earlier on in his video. Anyway, let's carry on.
Force of air inside trying to push back against you. So the ambient pressure will then become less. And this continues the higher you go. With the
Yeah, but a container is still required in order to have this density gradient as you are describing it. The gas pressure gradient is a delta of gas pressure. And in order to first achieve gas pressure, you need a container.
drop in pressure actually slowing the further away you get from the ground. At sea level, the air pressure is 14.7 psi. If you go up 10,000 feet, it drops by about 4.5 psi. If you go up another 10,000 feet, it drops again, but only by 3.8 psi. Go up another 10,000 feet, it drops by only 1.9 psi. So the rate...
Sorry, what, did we cover what PSI stood for?
Yeah, per square inch, pressure per square inch.
Square inch of the walls of the container, the prerequisite, the antecedent, the thing that's needed to achieve the gas pressure, per inch of that.
That the pressure drops slows more and more the further away from Earth you get. So as you go higher above Earth, the atmosphere doesn't suddenly...
Atmo what now? Sphere-shaped air? No, oxymoron. No.
...just stop. It's getting gradually thinner and thinner. And space itself...
And in order to achieve that gradient, you'd need containment. First comes gas pressure. So the gas comes out of the ground. The first ever gas molecule comes out of the ground and leaves the ground because that's where it's been produced. It then disperses. In other words, it travels in whatever direction it's traveling until it collides with something. Now, at this point, in the let's claim that I'm a baller describing heliocentric globe Earth at its birth. Now, in this description, the very first gas particle is liberated from the ground and never returns. It disperses into space, which is the ground level at this point. How does it ever achieve gas pressure, for it to then achieve gradiated gas pressure. It doesn't. It never achieves gas pressure in the first place without containment, as detailed by Dave.
Self isn't where there stops being atmosphere.
Atmo what now? You're just going to keep begging the question of atmosphere, sphere-shaped air, oxymoron.
Space is merely an arbitrary borderline that we have put in place so...
Yeah, that's what it is, arbitrary. Yeah, made up. Because there is no space. There is no arbitrary Kármán line. There is no point that gas go down, go boom, boom. There is no force of gravity. This is a cartoon with an oxymoron description of layers. Yeah, gas is not layered. Inhomogeneous anisotropic gases don't form layers.
So that we can say, up to this point, you are in Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah, you can say that. You can say it, but it doesn't comport with reality. Doesn't comport with natural law, because anisotropic inhomogeneous gases don't form layers.
I love how he put it, though. That he put it, it's an arbitrary borderline that we have put in place. In the back of my mind, I could think, oh, so that's the borderline where the gas is on its way to, and then it just says, no, I won't go into the vacuum, no, and then turns around. That's what it's going to do.
Liberal. They were liberal gas.
That's right.
Rebellious gas particles, man.
Can I respond to the super chat when you've done it, Nate?
You can. Retro Bill says a syringe without a needle is pointless.
That was good.
Brilliant.
The syringe analogy is quite interesting because he's trying to pretend that the pressure he's creating on his fingertip is it being pushed down. If he takes the barrel and the plunger out of the barrel, how much pressure is being applied if the air is allowed to equivocate to his model where there is no containment at the top? So once again, he's requiring full containment. If you apply it to his model, there is no pressure applied on his finger. The air is allowed to behave as gas does.
Did it? Was that you, Adam, dropping out in the middle of that, or was that just me, or was there a glitch or something?
I heard all of what Adam was saying. Heard everything.
Okay, maybe it was me.
Could I just say that Dave has something he added in and it's funny. He brought it in at nearly the very start of his video. Was about temperature changing the rate of the movement of the gas because it's adding energy, in particular kinetic energy. But now he's not mentioning that whatsoever because he's trying to add in PV equals NRG and he can remove the T. That's what he's trying to do while ignoring the V simultaneously.
Right. They always ignore the V, volume, the area that the gas would be able to fill. In this case, space would be the volume that the gas could fill because that's the area, that's the V, right, Brian?
Yes, but he's also removing the T. It's not PV equals nRT for him now. The very thing he basically mentioned, he actually covered the T part at the start of his video. Now it's PV equals nRG, not T.
Gotcha.
So he's ignored the temperature.
Not only that, he's ignoring the dome.
Yeah, but where does he get the... Exactly, if you say ignoring the dome, where do you get the volume? Arbitrary. Because he says it's in layers, the arbitrary amount of gas in this area, well, that's V. Well, what? The amount of gas below the Kármán line, where they all burn their bras in defiance of the law of nature that they've been following up until that point, dispersing upwards. Not down, go boom, boom.
Yeah, and then beyond this point, you are now classed as being in space. Kind of like the borderline.
That's not true either. NASA classifies space from sea level.
And between states. You know, you go to Four Corners Monument, you can walk around in a small circle and cross...
Anybody objectify, whiz past his equivocation here, his false equivalence. Anyway.
Space starts. The popular reference used is the Kármán line at 100 kilometers or 62 miles above sea level. Now,
See what now? See level, like the oceans being level, like giving you a reference, the average thereof, to give you topology and heights of mountains and stuff. Sea level, like a flat Earth. Yeah, that's a flat Earth proof right there. It's the third time you've used it.
This was put in place as a theoretical distance where air density is no longer sufficient for conventional aircraft to be able to maintain powered flight.
Fascinating stuff. On screen now is a second law of thermodynamics violation. If this black area is the same volume as everything from surface level, then this is the area that the gas has to fill. Gas, which has been created at ground level, expands up, as Dave just described, thinning out because there's less being produced in the sky. Shocking, isn't it? Meanwhile, the production of gas, to keep the concentrations high and the pressure higher, continue at ground level. Where there is no gas produced, less pressure. Where there's lots of gas produced, high pressure. In other words, imagine if you have a gas leak and there's high pressure gas being pumped into your house from the gas leak. Now, if you stand by the front door that is open, there's not going to be much gas there, as it disperses with entropy throughout the house. If you stand right next to where the gas is producing, there's a good chance it's going to be at a higher pressure, because that's where it's being produced. Likewise, there is a higher pressure in radiation as an antecedent consequent relationship of having containment on Earth. But the gas is still being produced on the ground and making its way up. And if this black area is a 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum, then the gas would disperse into it. Not just a little bit, all of it. Instantaneously, if it was ever to be in this circumstance, which it wouldn't be, because as I detailed earlier, the first gas that's liberated from the ground would vacate into space, never to return. Ever. So we'd never develop gas pressure in the first place in a heliocentric globe Earth world. Any comments before I start? Or restart?
Or that any spacecraft at this point would be
in Narnia
begin to experience just enough drag resistance that it would no longer be able to manage one full orbit unpowered.
Orbit? Another begging the question fallacy. What, you're talking about the motions devised by Kepler? This orbital motion? No. This church-based rhetoric describing how the lights in the sky move, transposed onto pieces of junk you claim float around in a sky vacuum whilst falling around a sphere Earth in a motion described by Kepler. Pathetic.
Powered. But there is still air molecules beyond that distance.
There'd be none on the ground. What's this green line? What's this all about? Yeah, clearly absolute fakery. Again, 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum, high pressure gas. Natural law, as described earlier in Dave's own description, with gas particles achieving pressure inside containment, would lead to us being dead in this depiction. This is Narnia. We don't have a sky vacuum.
I mean, there's still air molecules up beyond the ISS, just
in defiance of natural law.
Nowhere near as many as we have down here.
At high pressure, not dispersing into a 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum, in defiance of the second law of thermodynamics. This is a baseless assertion. Based on what? So far, what his actual evidence is, we're all wrong. It's these claimed to be photos from space. That's his actual standard.
The ISS actually experiences a tiny amount of drag from those few molecules, which causes a very, very slow decline in their orbit.
In Narnia, based on Kepler, the derivation of orbital motion comes from measurements of a flat plane. How are you going to have it falling around a sphere Earth when the derivation comes from angle measurements that are taken off a flat plane, Dave? Prior to refracted curvature.
And every few months they have to do a small burn to raise the orbit height again.
Orbit height? How is it possible that derivations of flat plane measurements can give you things falling around a fantasized sphere Earth in Narnia in a sky vacuum? No, Dave, no.
It's why old satellites eventually always fall back to Earth, because they're...
What, because they've come from Narnia?
their orbit height slowly decays and
all I've ever seen is physical evidence of balloons crashing into Earth. I have never seen any evidence of a sky vacuum based satellite crashing into Earth. Only balloons. That's what we actually see crashing into Earth. Balloons, not satellites, because they're in Narnia. So there aren't any to crash into Earth. There's no sky vacuum for them to be in, and there's no Kepler-based orbital motion derived from flat plane measurements for them to be falling around a sphere Earth that's been fantasized from those flat plane measurements.
no one does a burn to put it back in place.
In Narnia.
Now, the problem for flat earthers is...
There is no problem here. This is all your positive claim. Nothing here is a problem for us. All it leaves us to do is debunk your positive claim of orbits, sky vacuums, and second law of thermodynamics violations, which you originally affirmed. That would be the second law when you described entropy, dispersion, pressure and containment.
Is yes, if you remove gravity from the equation...
What, like Einstein did 107 years ago? It was removed by Einstein as a force, Dumbo.
Then air molecules...
Then air molecules won't be burning their brides in defiance of natural law. Yeah, that's right. Bent's pseudo-force space-time won't save you here.
Would be free to travel off into space.
So, based on that, let's just hear it again.
Now, the problem for flat earthers...
Meaning globe earthers, it's their claim.
Is, yes, if you remove gravity from the equation, then air molecules would be free to travel off into space.
So therefore, given that Einstein removed gravity as a force from the equation 107 years ago, the gas would fill the space. Thank you, Dave Twangles McKeegan, for that concise summary. Yes, Dave. The force of gravity was removed 107 years ago by Einstein, ergo gas would fill the space.
And then we would need a container.
You do need a container. You showed it in all of your examples.
But, as flat earthers point out...
this is going to be a stereotyping fallacy.
Ideal gas laws say that gas will try and expand in all directions to fill the available space.
Yeah, ergo space is fake.
And Newton's first law of motion states...
Right, the laws of motion of Newton were not right. I believe that was Feynman. Yet they've been superseded, usurped, replaced by Einstein 107 years ago. Dave clearly hasn't been through higher education, has he? Because he still thinks, like a high school educated standard person would, that gravity's a force, because that's what they told him when they lied. Now here, on the flat earth side of the discussion, we have people at parliamentary level appealing to government for the lies you're now parroting because of your ignorance of bent 4D space-time. That would be gravity as it currently exists, as described and invented in the mind's eye of Einstein, when he detailed the non-force, that would be to say it's not pulling gas, go down, go boom, boom, of gravity as the consequence of the uneven distribution of mass causing pseudo-4D space-time to bend. That happened 107 years ago, you complete dingleberry. You moron. You have no idea what you've just done. You've just told an audience that if we haven't got Newtonian, debunked 107 years ago, forces of gravity, which we don't, then gas would fill the space. Yeah, that's right. But you prefaced it by saying it's a problem for flat earthers, when it's not our positive claim. You complete Dumbo, who had burden of proof reversal fallacy on their call card. I think it was chocolate.
States that objects won't change direction unless a force acts upon it.
No. That's a Newtonian law, not a problem for flat earthers. And it is not in effect. Shout out to lumpy gas in a vacuum. Before we reiterate the 107 years out-of-date rhetoric of Newton. Globers believe in things they can't define. Yeah, that's a pretty good summary. Thanks for the super chat.
So if there's no gravity, then there's...
What, no force of gravity holding the gas go down, go boom, boom, the gas will fill the space. Yeah, it would have done anyway. We had a citation also from Chocolate earlier. In spite of the force, non-force that you can think of as a force of gravity, gas still fills space and needs a container.
no other force acting on the gas, it would be free to expand all the available space inside the firmament, and it would
Firmament? Another straw man stereotyping fallacy.
continue to do that until it reached an equilibrium.
Yeah, that's right, Dave. We'd all be dead in your heliocentric world. That's correct. But for your catch-all defense of gravity, it's a shame you weren't educated in higher education standards of bent space-time, Dave, which is clearly obvious to all watching this show, because you would know that it's not a force. Do we need Cox to tell you again, Prof. Brian Cox? There isn't really a force of gravity at all, end quote, Dave. How stupid do you look, given that you've disclaimed that without that force, gas would fill space? Yeah, we didn't need that disclaimer from you, Dave. It's a natural law.
Which would mean there wouldn't be a pressure gradient.
What, a delta of the gas pressure that needs containment? Yeah, we've already covered that.
Flat earthers keep asking to see an example of gas pressure next to a vacuum without...
No, just gas pressure without a container.
A container, yet I keep asking to see a container with a measurable pressure gradient, and so far
we can give you several filmed examples from YouTubers who filmed them heating up containers with different pressure gauges showing a differential in a container. Very easy to demonstrate. You form one naturally in a bottle garden. What are you babbling about, man? You telling me we can't show pressure gradients in containment? No, you must have containment to have any pressure ever to then show gradients.
Nothing.
Nothing? No. You've never shown gas pressure without a container. Every single one of your examples had a container. I've just referenced two examples. Bottle garden and Good Times for All with a bottle, heating it up and showing a different pressure at each end. There you go, there's two.
However, using what we've learned about gas in this video...
What, that it expands in all directions to fill containment?
I am going to argue that I can technically show flat earthers an example of gas pressure next to a vacuum without a barrier.
Beg the question. Do it for me. Point to the sky vacuum, you fundy.
That's what he's gonna do.
Go on, do it.
Right here.
Oh, I see. So you're just appealing that there is a sky vacuum. I was right. I called it. I guessed from the thumbnail.
Hold on, I guessed it too. I said he's doing it.
I guessed
Just
from
look
the...
up. Yep, that's the answer.
I guessed from the thumbnail. That's why I called it the way I called it, just from his thumbnail. So let's just put that on screen, right?
Wait, what did he point at? I'm not looking at the video.
On his thumbnail,
he's got...
On his thumbnail, he's got gas pressure with an arrow pointing to a space above his hand, vacuum pointing to a space above his hand, and no container pointing to a space above his hand. In other words, I automatically assume that there's a sky vacuum, and we do breathe gas pressure, therefore gas pressure next to a vacuum. Oh, you're a genius. Yeah, by genius, I mean clown. Don't beg the question, Dave. That's pathetic. You wouldn't last 25 seconds here.
Because, as we've already established...
With a container full of gas! What a dick. Wow, Dave. Wow. I don't even have to scrub.
Gas pressure is caused by molecules.
In primary school, they'd laugh him out of there.
Yeah, when he said gas go down, go boom, boom. The gas comes up in the sky and forms pressure layers. No, Dave. Mr. McKeegan, can you pay attention to the lesson? We're talking about the water cycle. Gas evaporates from the ground and goes up. Okay, Dave, you paying attention?
Molecules colliding with other objects. And
walls of the container in your example on screen now. Thanks for editing this. It saves me a lot of work.
Vacuum is an area where there is no matter. There's no stipulation about how much area there has to be for it to constitute a vacuum.
The area would be the V in the equation. PV equals nRT. And the volume would just be the calculable area that the gas could fill, as you described earlier. Now, while you may not recognise that there isn't any ascribed volume, oh, there absolutely is. The V would be space, Dave, because that's the volume the gas could fill. What's that you say? But that would mean we'd have no volume, would be equal with the space at 10 to the minus 17 torr. Yeah, that's right. Is that beyond your comprehension? That the V is the volume of the outer space that's fake?
If I take a syringe and I put
another container,
push it shut, and then I cover the end of it, there is hardly any air inside there.
It's a good job you got the pressure on the outside, right? Where'd you get that container needed?
If I pull the syringe back, then the air pressure is now dropping to pretty much zero. There are still a few molecules flying around inside.
So not zero then. Dumbass.
And those will create a very small amount of pressure.
Force exerted on the walls of the container.
But in between those molecules is nothing.
Now that's in between your ears.
So the syringe as an entire system might not be a perfect vacuum.
But it's definitely a container.
But
No
inside,
such thing
we have
exists.
Sorry, say again.
Yeah, there is no such thing as a perfect vacuum. It's non sequitur to the point anyway.
Areas of gas
excuse me.
pressure.
I have a question. Can you have a vacuum without a container?
That is undoubtedly the perfect note to round out the live stream, though. So with that, I'm going to say, if you're watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow.
Have your own mainstream guys telling you, even in the presence of gravity, the guy saying gas doesn't care about any of that shit.
That
Yeah,
doesn't
of course it
exist
doesn't.
anyway.
Of course it doesn't exist. But why? Of course that doesn't exist. But why is it their narrative has both sides coming out? It's nonsense coming out of both sides of the mouth.
Yeah, go double speakers. Yeah, they have no idea what they're. Look at it. He's retarded. Look at him.
Is of perfect vacuum and no physical barrier separating them. There has to be nothing in between air molecules, because if I fill a syringe with air and then cover the end of it and try and squash it down, I can, because the air molecules still have space between them to move into. If there was no space to begin with, I wouldn't be able to compress the syringe. And space itself isn't a perfect vacuum. It's called a near-perfect vacuum.
It's just a near perfect volume for the gas we're all breathing to fill. Okay.
It's not. It's not called a near perfect vacuum either.
There are still air.
Oh, press the wrong bit now.
If I take a syringe and I push it shut, and then there are still a few the syringe barriers, I can. Space itself isn't a perfect vacuum. It's called a near-perfect vacuum. There are still air molecules whizzing around out there. They're just very few and far between. At sea level, the distance between air molecules is roughly 3.5 nanometers. Now, a nanometer is 1/1000th of...
It sounds like a personal issue.
...a meter. Out in intergalactic space, the distance between molecules is more like 1 meter. So roughly 300 million times further apart. And an oxygen molecule is only 0.3 nanometers in size to begin with. To put this into perspective, if we were to take a bag of peas, with each one being 1 centimeter in size, now is in fact a vacuum. It just happens to be littered with air molecules that allow us to breathe. As we see with the peas, each pea is a molecule of gas. Those molecules alone are what create gas pressure, and yet there is more areas of nothing between the peas than there are peas themselves, which means every flat earther right now is surrounded by gas pressure that is directly next to a very, very small vacuum.
I was going to say it by peas. Yeah, exactly. Surrounded by peas.
He got that from Dorkemer.
Yeah,
remember? Because Dorkemer, I just did a treatment on Dorkemer with peas.
With no physical barrier in sight. And that, I think, is going to draw this video to a close.
Go on. Oh, okay.
Thanks once again to Brad.
Every time I start playing, there's a silence. I start playing, then you decide you're going to talk. Talk
I'm
in
sorry.
the silence.
Hey, Nathan, let me say something real quick. I just had a patient. He's a retired pilot that fuels other planes. So I said to him, I said, so so you're the guy, you're a pilot. Okay, so when you're flying, you're keeping the horizontal pitch at 2 degrees, a little bit higher. Spoke about the thing, but Brian would say, he said, yeah, of course we do. I said, and you never accommodate for any type of descent nose down to. He said, oh, you mean for the curvature of the Earth? I said, no, not for the curvature of Earth at all, because there is no curvature of the Earth. He said, it is when you get a certain height. They're still lying. So I said, at what height? He said, when you go up way high. I said, well, it's not at 40,000 feet. I said, it's not at 5,000 feet. I said, and it's not at 120,000 feet or even 90,000 feet. So when is it? He said, well, you mean as far as level? I said, yeah, level. I said, the horizon. The horizon that you see, whether you use a bubble sextant or whether you use, celestial navigation, it's level, right? He said, yeah. I said, so it's horizontal? Of course. I said, so there is no curvature. So he just looked at me dumbfounded. And he said, oh, I guess I see what you're saying. Dude, the indoctrination is strong. Or this guy was just trying to get himself and weasel his way out of admitting that the Earth was flat. Just got
why?
Literally, he just sat down. I put him in the waiting area. I didn't know he was a pilot, though.
Back to Twangles.
Brilliant.org for sponsoring this video. If you've enjoyed it and you haven't already done so, then please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video.
See you later, numpty. Yeah, he's just spurting out Darkimer, because Darkimer uses that brilliant.org too, and used the P example. He's just parroting Darkimer, just a little bit more stupid than Darkimer.
So he's not even an original idiot.
Yeah, because he used the P's. That cracked me up. Yeah, Darkimer did the same thing. Yeah, he's just a little dumber than Darkimer. That's all.
So peas are the new bouncy balls?
We're surrounded by peas.
I'll put it in Master B.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
What do ballers say when they hear things like this from this guy?
They don't. They just drool.
Right. Well, that's going to be where we round out then, clearly.
You already rounded out.
Rounded out the live show. With that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams. Hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!